is this? God, you're quick, man.
PJ, did we really adjourn at 8:38 last time? Wow.
It was early.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, so thank you, Brian, for the reminder. I just wanted to let you know. So this evening's meeting is being recorded by WAVM. It also happens to be simulcast on Channel 26 for Verizon. And we have at least one member of the public who's going to be streaming the meeting live. Just FYI. Anybody have any questions about the minutes? Any comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
What's that?
To accept the minutes?
Of?
You want me to read it?
Yes, I
Now let me
do.
get my glasses back on. 4:22.
Thank you very much. Motion's been seconded by Bob. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, 6-0. All right, so first up is our continuing our discussion. Oh no, excuse me. Yeah, let's start with that. I'll do updates a little later on. So first up is our discussion with continuing our discussion from March 25th with the school committee. Our primary topic is going to be on the Green Meadow. I did say that they had any updates. I think you all had your public hearing the other evening to finalize the budget and so forth. So if you have any updates from that, that's fine. But let's start in with the list. So just for context, at the last meeting, the school committee had provided us with an initial list. And we had, that list has continued to mature, and we got more information on it. And so we're going to run through the list. And so specifically, we had asked for not only cost, but specification on updates on the source of the funding, and also a timing on the funding, just because we know that the $610,000 that's being voted is proposed at town meeting to go into the Finance Committee's reserve fund to allow us to do reserve fund transfers to the school committee to pay for these expenses. That money will expire at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, and so we want to take a look at the timing of that. So just for the sake of my fellow committee members, I plan on going through these not sort of in top to bottom order, but I'm going to be doing them by topic, if you will. So I'm going to start out with the remediation repairs and then continuing down through.
Is it the?
So,
If I can interrupt, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Michelle brought printouts, and it's slightly updated. So if you'd
great.
like printouts, we're happy to pass them out.
okay. Thanks, Michelle. Did you have any comments that you wanted to kick us off with?
No,
before
no,
we get
no, not
started?
at all. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
So, just sort of FYI, are there any additional, have you updated the costs? Have you added any items?
So if you look on the last page of of what I just sent you.
Right.
So when I had first sent this out, I had put like a general amount, when it came to, the phase 4, the rebuild, repair, replacement phase.
Right.
What I did was, because now we're allowed back in the wing, we were able to get some quotes on things, so I tried to give you
Oh,
a
okay,
little bit
great.
more detail
Yep.
on the expenses and how that general amount of money would be broken down.
Okay. And so is that the main change?
That's
Okay,
the only
great. Okay.
change, yep.
All right, great. So, so starting at the top, so there were 3 items in phase 1 that were remediation and repairs. There was 4,800 for cleaning the gym and classroom B, 15,875 for removal disposal, 1,400 square feet, ceiling tile, main hallway, 2 storage rooms, and the moisture assessment mold inspection for $2,200. Replacement ceiling tiles for the cafeteria hallway, blocks for outside pod storage, and the ceiling grid installation in the hallway. The pod storage was $1,626.12, and the ceiling grid installation was $2,975. So, could you, those sound pretty self-explanatory. Those have already been paid? Meaning that you've already paid them, or?
So they've all been completed. The 15,875 has not been paid yet, but we just got an invoice for it.
Okay. So the cleaning gym, classroom B has been completed, and that's been invoiced and paid?
So everything that's in the completed section, now, I won't say that they've necessarily all been paid, but in my eyes, we've received an invoice, so we have to pay them because we've garnished the services, received our invoice, and.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. I guess what I'm saying is whether they had, so I'm assuming, so reserve fund transfer, you guys are paying it, and then you submit that to us, and so until, Mike, they have to pay it before they can do a reserve fund transfer?
Yes and no, it depends, they
Okay.
don't have to. In other words, if I knew, for instance, that we were gonna get a bill, let's say in May.
Okay,
I could submit it to you and show, well, you don't have sufficient funds to do it.
Okay.
Therefore, so you could.
all right.
I mean, it depends, you can do it either way.
Okay,
You'd
thank you.
have to have documentation similar to this.
Right.
Just as a quick reference, and the last time I looked, we have paid, out of the school department's budget, $361,000 so far towards these items. There are some invoices that have not hit a warrant yet. But like I listed in here, everything that's listed under the completed section has been completed, and we will be invoiced for it.
So I guess, and you have been invoiced with, and you got the latest one, which is the 15,875.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So let's focus just, I guess, on invoicing at this point then. Excuse me, I'm writing notes here. All right, so so there's 5 things that I've mentioned so far in phase 1, which had to do with the remediation and repairs, and those have all been invoiced. Okay. Any questions on these so far?
I have a quick question. Can you kindly remind me what the funding source, what the abbreviations stand for? I don't see it on the
Oh,
sheet.
that's just the color over there, but if you look on the last page,
Busy cut off, yeah.
it cut off on this one.
So the orange, I can,
So, orange,
so the orange is,
I can.
is Maynard Public Schools. So so O is orange, Maynard Public Schools, the R is Reserve Fund. The G is the, Special Education Stabilization Fund.
I'm sorry, is the what?
The SPED Stabilization Fund,
The green is?
the green is.
That doesn't take time, that's just you guys and board select.
that's the, yeah.
Right, yep.
There's a purple one, under phase 3, and that is the insurance. And then there's a yellow one under phase 4, which is funding that we've gotten from the Commonwealth, or the school committee we've gotten from the Commonwealth. And then, I guess we do have probably some questions about the Barnes and Noble thing, but we'll get to that when we get that.
Oh,
And
I
that's-
actually did update that. That is an
Yeah.
update on the new
That's
sheet,
fine,
sorry.
we'll get, no, we'll get to that. And that's the B there. So all the Rs are the reserve fund transfer, or proposed to reserve fund transfer. So then moving into go ahead.
Sorry, the question, you highlighted, I believe, 4 of these as related to remediation, I think your phrase was? That- right?
Those were my terms, not
Yeah.
theirs.
But are we saying does that mean, what about the other items that are listed here that aren't part of the 4?
So we'll go to those. I just want to do all the remediation ones, so that we're getting, sort of
Okay.
doing them by topic.
Thank you.
I just thought it might make more sense that way, working through. So, so then we go into phase 2, which is decontamination, and so then there's cleaning, disposal of 13 classrooms, furniture, and supplies. That was 228,400. Supplies and waste for decon, that was 15,000. Asbestos consulting and monitoring services, that goes through March
March.
8th.
Yep.
Reinstall the lighting, fire alarm devices in the hallway near the cafeteria, that was 617. Install new emergency light battery units in the hallway near teachers' lunchroom, it's 157. There was a replacement of the carpets, that was 3,840. There's overtime for replacement of ceiling tiles, that as well as moving and cleaning. Oh, that's right, you all are paying that. And then there's drain repair, 2 sinks. So, so the 228, that came out of the Service Master by Gaudet S&S abatement, as well as the 15,000.
Yep,
So are they finished with their work?
yes, yep.
So we don't anticipate any more work done under that purchase order?
No, besides what was in phase 3, but we've already been billed and,
Correct.
yeah, so they're completely done, yes.
Any other questions on these repairs?
On the page here, it says preschool classroom supplies, and there's 3 separate lines. Why are they 3 separate lines
Where?
and not?
First of all, that we haven't
We're not there
covered-
yet?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the
What
instructional
page are you
materials.
on?
I'm just going through.
Oh, you're going by
I'm just
type?
going, yeah.
Okay, apologies.
Oh, sorry.
Can I ask one I mean, do you want questions as though we're doing the reserve fund transfer now, or?
Well, I think if we've got questions, then we might as well, why don't we get through the remediations and talk about those, unless you have
Can you
specific.
just give us what category, I think it's a good idea to go through the overview, but the categories other than remediation that you are.
Well, there's
looking at?
instructional materials, which was the other big one, and so I just didn't wanna try to do instructional materials mixed in with the
Yeah.
repair.
Okay.
There's some things about air purifiers, which is sort of under a miscellaneous.
It's hard because we don't have that column on this. So I'm trying to follow what you're doing. Is that one of the ones you emailed us? I can open it on my computer.
Yeah. That,
Yeah, if you're working on tablets, I'm happy to re-email the copy if you don't have it, Jill. I'm happy to do that. Let me
no,
know.
I just had put a column in for my own use in terms of characterizing these. I just thought it'd be easier talking about the remediation, all the remediation and repair ones together. So,
There's-
did you have questions about a particular one?
Were these invoiced separately,
Which,
like each of the?
which item? So
Each of the
some-
line items you're listing here.
Um,
My question would be, I mean, the cleaning and disposal for 13 classrooms.
yep, that's all together. That is invoiced.
But that
all
seems high. Do you know, is that all treated as
Is that all in
asbestos
here?
waste?
Yeah, so it's asbestos waste and so there's two different, so you're talking about remediation and decontamination. So the remediation is the piece where we had to, remove the actual ceiling tiles and replace them. The decontamination is the piece that DLS mandated us to do, to throw out all of the, stuff within the 13 classrooms and clean that furniture. If we were gonna keep it, we had to clean all of that furniture. So that's a decontamination piece. That ranged about like,
It's mostly labor cost.
it's majority of labor costs. There's a ton of bugs in here, sorry.
Thanks.
Hilarious, but, sorry.
So yeah, and that's all in here, right? Like all the, I know you had copies of
Yeah.
everyone's time card and all
Oh,
that.
that makes more
Guess
sense.
So-
we need
Yeah, yeah.
decontamination.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So the decontamination ran about like $13,000 to $15,000 a day. And that was labor costs. And that's what we were required to do. So, and I mean, I'll just go through it. Originally, we didn't think that we were going to have to throw out everything. But because of the amount of outcry that DLS had gotten, they came in and changed their plan. And required us to throw out absolutely everything that we didn't spend money on cleaning. So it did come to our point where we were like, we're done from this point forward. If it's cheaper to throw it out, we need to start throwing it out because, you know, as each day passed and you see $13,000, $15,000, we had to kind of make a decision. So what we kept was mainly furniture.
And the computers.
And all technology, yep.
Okay.
So, going back to it, so there's an invoice, which I assume sits there and lays out what they
Has
did.
everything, and it even has day by day and sign-in sheets and totals, and I can send you guys that, that's, yeah. But
Well,
it's-
yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it. Yep.
All right, good question. Other questions? So then, moving on to phase 3, then we had the $180,000 and the $8,365. This was S&S abatement. I assume, was this one invoice?
It was one invoice, I split it up like that to show what the
Right.
insurance was paying for.
So the insurance
and
pays for the 180, and then so it's one invoice.
That's one invoice for $188,365. And then an additional invoice for the $29,335 and the $10,946.
I'm sorry, say that again now,
So the one.
that's all one invoice, all four of
The
them?
188,365 is one
Right.
invoice from them. The 29,335 and the 10,946 is on a separate invoice.
Together, the two things?
Those are together, those are actually together with the 4,800 and the 15,000 from phase 1 and phase 2. That's why even though they're a part of phase 1 and phase
Right.
2, I didn't get the invoice until now.
How did you all pick the service master by Gadet? Why, I mean, how did the selection come up with them? Was it competed, or
To be honest, that's probably just the best question for Aaron. Aaron in facilities oversees vendors, you know, it's like we wouldn't know who's paving the road at Powder Mill.
So he provided the vendor?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I can just tell you, Service Master is the pass-through. S&S Abatement is a subcontractor of Service Master. So Service Master's role was to provide, originally, they were going to provide, and now I'm going off memory on this because I didn't speak to them in the beginning, but originally what they were going to do is provide the move out and pack back in services, as well as the pods that are there, and act as the agent for the insurance paid them directly and they paid out S&S. So as S&S is their subcontractor. We ended up not using Service Master for anything other than for some moving supplies and the pods, because our own personnel did the pack out and the pack back in, along with like community members and that whole moving day thing. So we ended up not using Service Master for what I think what they originally were talked to about. I don't know how else to say it, because I don't know if it was
Yeah,
a
no, the
contract or
original
not.
consultation
Yeah.
versus how we sort of
Right.
unfolded it and tried to save along the way and
Right.
things like that.
Yep.
So did you get copies of the invoices from the subs that they had?
From S&S?
Yeah,
Yeah, so Service Master
right,
sent us a bill
right.
with S&S's costs within their bill, and then the backup for Service Master's bill was all the time sheets and sign-out sheets and spreadsheets from S&S to show the backup for what they were invoicing us for.
So are we able to distinguish what S&S did from
What Service
anything that
Master?
Service Master
Correct.
did?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, it's completely broken
And so
down.
when we look at that invoice, we're probably gonna find a lot of work being done by S&S Abatement.
Yeah, the
And
majority,
relatively little done by
Correct.
Service Master.
yep, yep.
All right. So you said that the 29,335 was additional DLS mandate for pipe wrap removal, cabinet removal, and so forth.
Yes. That was when we were, once the decontamination was done and we were doing the remediation, when they opened up the ceilings, DLS came back through for an inspection. And when they came back through for the inspection, there was some asbestos on some joints. I'm not a facilities person, but some type of joints that we had to abate, as well as pipe wrapping along the pipes that we didn't originally think we were gonna have to do. The other part of that is the cubby removal. So the cubby removal, because we feared that there was asbestos underneath it, and we wanted to take care of it while we were already in the contamination,
Sure.
locked up airtight thing. We asked S&S, I mean, I personally asked S&S to do the cubby removal, just in case that there was something underneath there. We wouldn't have to call them back out to have that done and then pay another $15,000 to wrap up the whole place. So that additional cost was in there as well. But the majority of the 29,000 is the joints and the pipe wrapping. The
Right.
cubbies didn't really cost very much, but
So, I was looking at the original estimate, comparing the original estimate to what the actual ended up being. And that ended up being sort of identified as the difference between the original estimate, which
Yep.
sort of explained
Yep.
how that,
Yeah, we knew once we opened up the ceilings, there was the potential for DLS or anyone really to say, hey, the
Right.
ceilings are open, we see it, let's deal with it, and
Yeah.
that's exactly why there's
well,
a
I guess the
difference.
other thing, you know, the more positive thing about that is the estimate that they gave was pretty much the estimate
Yeah.
that they abided by. And
Right.
so
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
we ended up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Except for the 29,000.
correct.
Exactly.
Any other questions on that? I guess, included in sort of the remediation and repairs, you had Cassetta Electric coming in for
Yep.
two things, during this phase, supply of temporary construction light sets, labor charges, disconnecting and so forth. Okay. So, then I guess we can come down to phase 4, which is gonna be a little bit, different. It sounds like you have some more information on that. So, I guess you originally had said 100,000 for replacement of the ceiling tiles, grid and pre-K, K wings was 100,000, and I assume that the stuff in red underneath is estimates?
Those are estimates. The replacement of the grid and the ceiling tiles and, are pretty close.
So
Those are,
so the grid is 38,000, ceiling tiles, I assume that's the materials, 13,500. And then you have priority fire,
that's, because we had to take down all the fire alarms and everything, so they have to come back in and do a replacement of fire
Okay.
alarms.
and then electrical work, is that Cassetta again?
It's,
Or
I don't
we don't
know,
know.
we don't
We don't
know,
know. Okay.
but
It's
we're
3,000.
estimating it because we have to replace all the lighting,
Right.
and there's also IT, wiring that needs to be rerouted.
And then there's labor of 5,500, so,
I think it's 65,000.
I think it's 68.
68,000, I
The
can't,
total of it is 65,000.
yeah,
You're right.
65,000.
65?
The total of what's
So
in
like
red
my
there.
100,000
Right.
was, you know,
So is that all of the things that are gonna need to be done to replace, or? So in other words, are you saying that the estimate is now, rather than 100,000, is based on the latest data, is gonna be 65,000?
yes, but I have learned through this
Yeah,
that I can say 65,000 and then, you know, an inspector walks in or,
Yeah.
you know, something else goes wrong. So I would say I would like to, even though I don't
no, I
believe it's gonna
understand.
be 100,000, I'm not gonna say I guarantee it's gonna be only 65, but that's.
I'm not looking for a guarantee.
No, I
I
know.
guess what I'm saying is, the work that you estimated originally, I realized it was just a
Yep,
broad estimate,
Yep.
100,000.
Yep.
Now that you've got better numbers,
Yep.
that body of work is now gonna be 65.
yep,
You
Around.
think, okay.
ish.
Yep. And then you had, the, 50,000, which was for the, that's the painting of the hallways, the rooms, removal of kitchenettes, sinks, perform recommendations put forth by future Green Meadow Future Committee as stated in recommendations attached. That's not the study that they're talking about.
No, there's
No.
sort of two
Okay.
amounts, and they're very
Right.
similar. So one is a recommendation that we procure professional services that we can talk about after,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
like. This is
Something else.
yeah, this is a total, it's a laundry list that Josh Morse and his team put together with Josh's expertise. It's a great list for us, and a lot of it's operations and maintenance, but it's as if someone put it into a computer and gave it out to us. So we met yesterday with Tim Goulding, who's the assistant facilities director for the town, and it was good to hear that a lot of it is already even underway. So, but that gives you an idea of the dollar figure of just sort of the the sort of informal free audit that Josh was kind enough to give us.
And that's in green, but that's also orange. Those things are what Tim and I had worked on using the facilities revolving account for. Because a lot of the things that the Green Meadow Future Committee put forth, although they are putting them forth because of this issue, they're general maintenance things that we should be taking care of within our budget, within our planning, that we normally, these are the kind of projects that we would normally plan out of ours, so that's why I didn't include them in our request to the reserve fund.
Yeah, we don't need additional funds for that. That's part of our normal yearly, and we pay it out of the facilities rental revolving
Right.
fund. So I probably just said what you said, sorry.
So what is do you have a line item in the school budget for maintenance?
Oh, yeah, we have a.
And
we
so
have-
how much is that? I'm
Well, it
trying to
dep-
understand what percentage this $50,000 is.
So that's
of it.
going to take our entire facilities revolving account. We have $58,000 in that account right now. So this isn't really general fund money. This is our revolving account, facilities rental revolving. This is the account that we normally work on special projects that we cannot afford within our maintenance budget and the general fund budget. Because our general fund maintenance budget has not really went up over the years.
So this
So-
is the revolving fund where somebody does a rental of it.
Right.
The money goes into that and then you use it to
Use
do
it for
up-
facilities.
up-
We-
Exactly.
We purely use it
Right,
for facilities.
I remember, yeah.
Yep. So like just an example, some of the projects that came out of it this year were, some sinks up in Fowler that needed repair that we, didn't anticipate in our budget to do. So we use the facility rental account, purchasing some AC units, for, or the cost of the electrical to set up these AC units in Fowler for, I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but
No, that's
for
good.
different reasons, why
Right.
we had to have AC units in different rooms. So
Right.
we would use this account to do those things, because it's not something that we foresaw the previous year and put into our general fund budget.
So can I ask the,
Yep.
if it's about 58,000, you're talking about how much you can get in from rentals, and let's assume that that's an annual amount in that range?
Yeah, so we,
But, so that you have another maintenance budget, operating budget line item?
yes.
And what is that usually budgeted for, average?
I'd have to take a look, because it's multiple lines.
Yeah.
But I can tell you. And I had done this like, if I could find it. So I have FY '18 in front of me. I did a little summary of what we've spent in facilities over the last 10 years. I use the end-of-year reports, so this is actual expenditures and out of the different funds. So in FY '18, our maintenance of building was $85,000, and that's for all three buildings.
And that's over and above whatever came in from the rental revolving fund?
Right, so
Yeah.
generally, we take in around $60,000 to $70,000 in our facility rental revolving account. And I'm saying that we haven't previously charged for all the stuff that we are charging for now, so we actually do have a little bit more money to work with to repair the building in the last 2 years. But I will say, I think it will be generally around $60,000 or $70,000. We have College Gate that comes every single year, and that's a big chunk of it.
Thanks.
So I guess where I was going with this is, so whether this is coming out of your revolving fund, which I understand it is, or it's coming out of your regular operating maintenance fund, this is $50,000 that you won't otherwise have. And so I'd be interested in understanding sort of what the proportion is. So what you're saying is, you generally get maybe, you can bank on 60,000 in a revolving fund. You said last year you spent 85,000 on the three buildings.
Well, I spent way more, but out of the general fund was 85,000.
Right.
Okay,
Then we had,
So the general fund is what we budget,
right,
And then the revolving account, which can fluctuate, but you're right, like an average of 60, let's say. So
And
you're
then
really, I
there-
think really what you're thinking is you want to add those together, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
For
fine.
what I think you're
What I'm
trying to
trying to
work through.
understand is how much money do you all have sort of targeted, earmarked for maintenance? And I'm trying to understand how then this $50,000 is what proportion of that?
Right.
So if, for example, it was 100% of it,
Yeah.
then that would be one picture. And if
Yeah.
it's 10% of it.
So we
that'd be a
generally,
very different picture.
in money that we would earmark purely for facilities or maintenance is probably around $150,000 between the general fund and that revolving account. I will tell you, though, that when we don't have enough money in either one of those accounts, we do spend out of school choice for facility rentals. And I think you could see that if you looked at the end of year report, because
Right.
there are multiple places. We also, some of the capital comes from the town, out of the capital pieces as well for the school. So there are other places, but for us, $150,000, I would say, is
Okay.
what we actually budget on a yearly basis.
All right, and so you can see where I'm going with this, that's about a third of the
Third,
money
yeah.
that you
Yeah.
have.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's a,
Yeah.
you know, that's where.
Right. And just to give one example of sort of this task list that we received from the committee, that totals around $50,000. So a lot of it is stuff that we would be doing anyway, but it's a great idea to obviously point it out and write it down. But one of the new ones would be, and I point it out because it's a 5-figure number, explore dehumidification throughout the school as appropriate, and just a ballpark number of $15,000. We may or may not be able to fund that. It's a great idea, and I'm not going to pretend I can explain it, but people in facilities can explain why that's a good idea. That might have to go through the capital planning process, and I don't mean to make that sound like a 5-year process, but might be a need we need to push forward next year. You know, we'd love to deal with everything we're being told is an issue right away, but there might be some trade-offs, right? You know, I don't know that we can do every recommendation, so we've got to think about them as they come up and then just sort of make tough choices. So, I mean, it'd be great to do them all right off the bat, but that may or may not be possible. So there's a few things in there that are more 5-figure-y, and then there's a bunch in there that are $300, for example. So we're sort of working through that laundry list. But some of the $300 ones, you know, for example, are things we would have already been planning to do next year. So I know that's a little bit murky, but I think the better way to look at it is it's a third out of the $150,000 sort
Right.
of annual number. So
I'm sorry if I missed this.
that's
but
okay.
The list of suggestions from the committee,
Yep.
do we have that?
That hasn't been forwarded yet.
We've just received it yesterday, and we've just gone over it sort of as at a high level with Tim. And I know it's going to be updated. So when we met with Tim, Megan from the Green Meadow Committee was available to meet with us, and I know she took away a task of updating the list, right? So it was a great first list, but Tim had a lot of great updates, like that's already done. So I know when Megan updates it, I think that's a more shareable document. And she's sitting a few seats behind me.
And she's nodding.
Yeah, so I think, I would just propose that that'll be a more shareable document, and of course, we will widely share it, so,
Yeah.
just my thoughts.
All right, so I think we've got a good grasp on the repairs and remediation part. Do you anticipate any other expenses on sort of the building, the repairs, remediation aspect of this, or is the work done?
No, yeah, the work is done for the remediation and the decontamination. That is 100% completed. We, all of the testing, the other contract that you haven't talked about that was part of this is the UEC, which is the
That was already,
on-call.
that was back up and,
There's 2 different places. Oh, sorry, that's the other update. Sorry, Ken. UEC Universal, because I had put it in red at the bottom that we
Right.
would be receiving that. I did receive that invoice today, actually. So that's $9,305. That was for phase 3. Project manager, industrial hygienist, PCM air samples, and
Is that on
10
this
air
list?
samples. It's on the new thing that I gave you, under
Yeah.
phase 3, it's the last page.
oh, yeah, I see it now.
2 up from not completed.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, right there, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So I actually received that today.
Okay.
And so officially, for UEC, Service Master, and S&S abatement. We are completely invoiced and completely done with their services,
So,
except for the on-call services moving forward for
So-
asbestos, that.
Yeah, I know the town is thinking about, and I don't want to speak for the town.
Right, I don't-
And really, I just mean facilities, and of course, it's sort of a joint decision at this point. But I know that they're thinking of just sort of contracting on-call some professional services around the asbestos issue now that we have come to an understanding on what our responsibilities are.
Yeah.
So it's possible that going forward, they might do, sort of how we have an arrangement with Wayne Amico's company. I don't know that it would look exactly the same, but, there's certain things that we need professional expertise on as a town. So yes, so if you see more UEC things, although I don't think you would in your role,
Yeah.
it would be because the town wants to contract them.
so UEC, we knew was doing the asbestos consulting in phase 2. But the 9,300 was not on your list. So what's
You mean-
that?
Wasn't on my list. That was in the red, on the original list I sent you, at the bottom of everything in red, it said, that I was still waiting on an invoice for UEC for the, because they're required, so UEC is the one that draws up the, plan, the.
When you say
GLS
the-
from you, yeah.
Let me just clarify.
Yeah.
When you say the original list, the one that we talked about on.
No, this
this-
original one before I
Yeah, so it
updated it
was,
today.
It's underneath the totals there.
Under the totals, on the, all different colors on the bottom.
Oh, yes.
Way down.
Yeah, sorry.
No. Okay,
So they were required to be there the entire time that the abatement and decontamination were going through. They were the
Okay.
ones that were actually doing the air testing and giving us the reports every morning to make sure everything is clean and clear. They're also required to have a industrial hygienist on site anytime any abatement and decontamination. That's part of the DLS requirements for this process. So we were waiting on, I received it today, I had been trying to get it from him, but we were waiting on his last invoicing. So we will not get another invoice for him pertaining to this issue.
okay. So going back to what we were saying before, from the building perspective, we know everything, and we're all invoiced now.
Yep, yep.
When are you guys gonna start doing reserve fund transfers? Obviously, you can't do them yet, because we don't have the money yet, but are you gonna?
As soon
be
as you're ready.
Are you gonna, I'm sorry?
I said as soon as we're ready, right?
May
As soon as you're ready.
As soon as you want to give it
Or,
to us.
No, May
Yeah.
21st.
Yeah.
When I don't personally know the
No,
the inner workings of when the funds will be available, assuming they pass at town meeting, right?
They're ready right away, aren't they, Mike?
You don't have the money to do it until May 20th.
And May
Yeah, yeah.
21st, they can
That's what I'm
start
saying.
sending you
Yes.
stuff,
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we need
Come
to,
back here the night of town meeting and I'll have it ready for you.
Yeah,
We'll all be here, sure we will.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the right thing to do, since so much of the work is completed and
Right,
invoiced,
right.
is to schedule another meeting at every, that the key people can attend, and we have another meeting like this with the stacks of paper and the questions, just, absolutely,
Yeah.
whatever we can do,
And-
but I don't think we can do anything till after town meeting.
well, so you can start getting the reserve fund transfers together and getting them all done. And, obviously, they can't get forwarded until the money is there, or, well, I guess you could forward them, but they're gonna sit on
Right.
Mike's desk
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, no, well,
But I'm
sure
just
we-
saying, I think we got enough things here that we wanna go ahead and start, start going through that, so.
But can we just clarify the process on reserve fund transfers?
Sure.
That just, our internal process is, we want them to go through the board of selectmen also
Yeah.
Okay.
to get comment there. So just won't be like the meeting the night after town meeting.
Yeah,
No, so that Mike's gonna take them to Greg, and then they'll sort of compare them against lists. The whole idea behind the plan was so that they could sit there and say, yep, on the plan, good to go.
yeah.
And then put them through the board of selectmen, and then they can come to us.
I already have them.
All right, good.
So it sounds like it's a school committee vote, a board of selectmen notification, a FinCom notification, and then schedule a meeting. is my high-level takeaway
I don't know
from the
that we-
process.
I don't know that we need a meeting, I mean, I don't
Oh,
know that
okay.
we need another meeting.
Okay,
You know, if we get to the point, I mean, that's the purpose here, is
Sure.
that we know these up front.
no, that's fine. I
So,
was just more,
if
it's
you
sort of
wanna have a
a,
meeting-
I like to have a little take-home list if, if we need to do anything, so.
No, I think
I
it's.
don't want any more meetings.
No, so I think it's, you know, there may be discussions, but I think
Sure.
that those things can, you know, can you clarify this point, or what is
Yeah.
this,
Oh, of
or why
course.
is this amount different, or something like that, but, you know. So, to Peter's point, once you submit them in, then, you know, Mike and Greg will talk them over, show them the board of selectmen, and forward them, bring them to us in a FinCom meeting.
Sounds great.
All right, so, anything else on the building stuff before we jump into instructional materials? All right. Lot of instructional materials.
Just to give a big picture review of why that had to be done, because I was in the meeting when the companies would come in and ask, they were like live meetings, like, should we, literally, they wanted to know if they should like wipe down like the little intricate dinosaur type things. In any book, they would have to do their wipe down of every single page. And then when you think about how much these folks get paid hourly because of their level of expertise, that's where the bills for, you were in that meeting as well. You know, so we were in real time understanding the choices in front of us. You know, did we want to spend money on wiping down every page of every book of every child, every teacher? It's an amazing amount of paperwork in there in books. So, so that's why we were running the numbers. You know, is it just easier and cheaper in many, many cases just to order new, which was frustrating, but yeah, Michelle was right there. It was interesting decisions, but it was an astronomical cost to keep letting them wipe things down at that hourly rate.
So, you know, I'm not really sure how to sort of go through these. I think from the building perspective, it was easy to sort of say,
Yeah.
okay, this is for this is for this, and so forth, but in terms of the instructional
Do you-
materials.
Can I,
Would it help you, if I went through the process of how we came up, how these came up and how the requests came through the system?
Couldn't.
Is that, I mean, I don't know if that will help clarify how we vetted through what needed to be
I
done.
just said, do you have subtotals by your categories from your thing?
Nope,
Okay.
I did not subtotal.
Right, so there's a lot of the materials, but, I mean, my rough guess from looking at this before is it's still only like 20 or 25%, and most of the money is in
Yeah.
the building stuff, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we should be conscious of that as
Yep.
we talk about these, that there may be a lot of them, but overall, it's not most of the money.
in, the other thing is too, is that even looking at this, although we look at it, you think, oh, that's a significant amount of money. We went through like the Barnes and Noble where we got, a significant discount on replacement books. We got a ton of community, donations, that also helped reduce the amount of stuff that is on this list. We also, we had a list with Walmart, although I don't know if, what we actually received off that
Right.
list as of this point, but this is a list of everything that we could not get via donations or discount or whatever. So, like, there was so much more that we actually took care of that didn't end up having to hit this list.
So these were all materials that were in the rooms that were
Correct.
affected.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned, so then those materials got thrown away or disposed of.
Yep,
And so you said there was a process that you went through.
right.
So why don't you
Sure.
talk a little bit about that?
So, what happened is, they went through the normal purchase order process, so we had discussions with the, preschool and kindergarten initially, before they had received their donations from a lot of the community members, and said, you know, give us a list of the items that you need, give us a list of, what you need in order to be successful through the rest of the year. what are things that you feel are missing from your classrooms with after the donations came in? What are the things that you're missing from your classroom? So a lot of it was the actual instructional materials that they lost, like our entire Foundations program, which is our early literacy program. There's no donation coming in for the community for that. That's actual instructional supplies. So a lot of this are those instructional supplies that they needed in order to continue their curriculum. So they put in all purchase orders. Then just like the regular process, they enter the requisition. The purchase order goes to the principal. The principal then vets through all the purchase orders. There are some purchase orders that aren't filled because either the principal felt like we didn't need them at this moment, or they were kind of repetitive and she saw them being ordered in other places. So then she vetted through all of the purchase orders, and once she approved them, they came to the business office where I just merely make sure they're being charged to the correct account, and we send them out for order. So this was really an effort of the teachers really taking a look at what they had in their classrooms and what they felt like they really needed in order to be successful for the rest of the year and moving forward, because they lost, years worth of materials out of their classrooms.
So I assume you all have a budget, an annual budget for replacing instructional materials.
A very small one. A very small one, yeah.
Would you care to characterize?
It's like, I'll give you an example. At the high school, we have $30,000 for textbook replacements. That's eaten up by one set of textbooks on a general basis. I think at Green Meadow it was $1,500 for textbooks. They're not huge budgets for replacement of materials. Each school gets around $30,000 of supply money for their general classrooms. It's differently split up between the district. The high school generally does it on a request basis. Fowler gives a certain allotment, and I believe at Green Meadow, Donna does all the purchasing and then sends it out to each of the classrooms. So it's done differently in all three buildings, but I would say maybe $30,000 for each school for these kind of things. And that's not really replacement money. That's like set up for your classroom for the year. Granted that you still have the stuff from the previous year, you're buying some additional highlighters or some additional chalk or crayons or something, but not an extensive classroom refurbish, type of thing.
So you're including in that just general supplies?
Not in here,
No,
but
in the-
yes,
no, in the
yes, in the
30,000 per
30,000,
school.
general supplies.
Yeah, paper for,
Paper, yep,
yeah,
yep.
okay, right.
Yep.
What was your estimate on this?
I'm sorry.
On the instructional materials?
From here,
Yeah.
I didn't, I was eyeballing
Yeah.
and thinking it's like 25% or something. But I honestly haven't added up any of the numbers.
It's over 100.
100,000
Yeah.
of the 500, so that would be like 20%. Yeah, no, I don't mean it's inconsequential, it's real money, but,
The 100,000 just for the curriculum supplies?
Well, including the 60,
Oh, the leveled library.
Oh, the
Yep.
level library,
Yeah.
yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that,
Yeah,
oh, including
that
the
increases it very
state money?
quickly.
Oh.
Yeah,
yeah, because the entire level library was
lost.
gone.
so so Jill had the question about the multiple lines, and these are just different invoices. So it says preschool classroom
Yeah.
supplies 3 times. Those are just different invoices. I assume these are each individual
Yes.
invoices.
Yep, yep. And I just didn't go through listing every single thing on each invoice.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I guess one of the things that, you know, is rolling around in the back of my mind is the money that we're spending on this 610 is coming from, essentially the stabilization funds that we would normally be using to get up capital for our other projects. And so I'm just sensitive of the fact that
I hear you.
there's, you know, spending the $610,000 means $610,000 we don't have for other capital projects. So I'm just stating
It's
the
down to
obvious, I guess.
529. It's now 529.
I
Yeah.
added them up, they're roughly 87K.
Oh, nice.
Does that include the 60,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought the instructional supplies were around 20 to 30,000.
Well, I didn't add them up.
And I know last time we met, the spreadsheet totaled $610,000 under the request for town funds. But subtracting out the money that Kate Hogan was able to secure and then finalizing the numbers and looking for other ways to get some of the work done. Not that it's an inconsequential number, but it is down to 529, we'll say 530,000, just to stay on the same overall set of large numbers.
Okay.
That's welcome news. Actually.
Well, that's what you always hope, but you don't want to promise.
So, I don't know if you want to keep going on the instructional materials, but I just have two other questions.
Yep.
For other things. So, these are still reserve fund transfers coming out of free cash. So, by definition, these are, you know, one-time kind of events. And I don't have a problem with, you know, other than the number's big, as you were saying, Ken, I don't have any issues with the descriptions that you've made, other than I have a question about the air purifiers and a question about the website. So the website looks like it goes through most of the fiscal year, at least let's call it half. No, it's the whole fiscal year, right? Am I looking at that right? At any rate, yeah, it doesn't seem like it belongs in a reserve fund transfer, unexpected kind of event category. So, you know, all these other ones, we go through a list of questions we would ask about how you do reserve fund transfer requests. And that one doesn't look like it fits to me. So I was looking to see if you've thought about that, or there's an explanation for that that I don't understand.
So I guess so the reason this website was created and at the emergency, which is what costs so much money, is that the quick turnaround on creating this Green Meadow Future website, because of this project and the need to put out that communication. Normally, we wouldn't have had this website at all. The only reason we have it is because of this project. It is a one-time, the $10,000 is a one-time thing. The remaining amounts that have went out were notifications on this project.
But this,
Updating
but
the
the red
community.
line goes all the way out. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that.
That's because yes, sorry, so I'll explain. That website is good for an entire year. That's it.
So all the updates and things like that. So when we want to,
And constructed and that
Yes.
money is already ready to be paid.
Yes.
and the only thing just that I'll make a comment on, because I think I understand sort of your bigger picture there. I think it became really apparent. So what we did with the regular website that we already have up and running for Maynard Public Schools, as Mauro and myself, coming from that field, we pitched in and tried to do all of the updates and all of the documents and everything ourselves to pitch in, because really, when you're bare bones staffed, as Town Hall also is, you discover very quickly in a crisis situation, you do not have the manpower. Even if everyone's really working around the clock, I don't want to exaggerate, but many, many hours. And we weren't able to keep up with it. And and I think this is valid, the community had so many questions and concerns and wanted answers, and I think it's all very valid. So we needed help, and this is what these companies specialize in. So similar how the town uses the same company to send out their press releases, personally as one person, I could maybe think about other ways to spend press release money. But yeah, I mean, we needed help, we needed information, they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at that company. So when test results came in, when state reports came in on a Friday at 5 o'clock, we forwarded it and it got updated. And we can go back and forth about how quickly should we have to update the community, but it was very clear people wanted information as fast as possible. And I'm not criticizing that by any means.
No, I understand.
But this has taught me for sure that this is when a small town with with small staff, you can really, it was a snowball kind of effect those first. I don't know.
I don't think Bob is questioning whether it was.
Oh, no,
in
this
the
is why I
first place.
consider it unexpected. Like, we were not ready to be able to communicate in a timely manner, crisis level,
Yeah.
depending on your own personal opinion, level of information. Like, even with adding school committee members to the, to the tasks.
Yeah,
So that's the only
I-
reason I think of it as a one-time, because next year, we're in negotiations to possibly fund it further for another year after that, because the Green Meadow Future Committee will likely exist for many years. And that would become part of our operating budget. So the one-timeness I see, but I really do see your point a lot.
Well, that's the explanation I was trying to understand.
Well, before we leave that one, I have to say, I sort of had the same reaction. And I'm not sure I know exactly what your reaction is, but my reaction was that doesn't, I'm not saying it's unimportant, I'm not saying it shouldn't have been spent, I'm just
Right.
saying this doesn't seem sort of like the same.
It's not usually what you see.
Well, so again, I'm sitting here thinking every $10,000 that we take out of this free cash and spend for
Sure.
something is $10,000 that we don't have for some other capital project.
Exactly.
And, I think for me, it's a little bit easier. Again, we can sort of go around the committee if maybe there are different perspectives and so forth, but, I started out sort of with the remediation repairs because that to me was sort of the easier one. The instructional materials was getting a little tougher because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, and then when you get down to, websites, then I'm sort of at the,
Yeah, no, I totally see it. I hear you.
I don't know, anybody else wanna?
I mean, I had a little bit of the same reaction, but I think actually, yeah, communication is important these days. I get what you're saying, and I think it's appropriate to include it.
Anything else?
I
And you were-
think it's.
Yeah, you had asked about air purifiers?
Yeah, 1 second. So, the idea that the communication would be going on into the future, I think is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
And as always, this isn't the first, reserve fund transfer request that's come up to say, well, is it really unanticipated, and can't you start looking at that
Sure.
as your normal operating budget? And if that's what you're planning to do here, that.
Yeah, no, definitely going forward, absolutely.
The explanation makes sense to me. So, yeah. The other one, you want to talk about air
Yep.
purifiers?
I was curious what your question was.
Yeah, I just, I was at a couple of the school committee meetings when people talked about the air purifiers, and I'm aware of most of the explanation, but again, here, I look at the numbers and it looks like there's a number of air purifiers, but not one for every room. I guess I'm really looking at, is this a stopgap measure that we have to do this year, and are there going to be more, and how is that going to be budgeted for in the future? That's
So
really
this
my
this
question.
is for every room.
This covers
Every
everything.
occupied room in Green Meadow, we have purchased air purifiers for,
Okay.
and that was part of the
Roughly 27,000 if you look at all the different line items related to purifiers.
That's
Yeah.
not, yeah, that sounds
Yep.
about right. I'm definitely looking at over 24 and a half just in 2 line items, so.
And we did get a donation of 8 air purifiers from this company that were for the gymnasium.
And so, I know just enough to be dangerous about purification
Yeah.
and all that. So, I know that they take quite a bit of maintenance to make sure they're working anywhere near what, you need them to do when they first start out. So, the budget isn't only for this, but also for a renewed effort to make sure that these are maintained in a way that they're always working at peak performance. So how, is that really a plan yet, or on a list of things to do?
Yeah, no, the type, I'm sorry.
Nope.
I was going to say, I know that the type that we all looked at, we tried to make them as custodian maintenance friendly as possible. We looked at a lot of models. There were some unintended consequences if we went one way versus another way. So the ones we bought, I think, should be able. We have other vents and intricacies to running a building. And if our custodians, honestly, one of the takeaways, and I hope this comes across the correct way, is that we probably have staff that need better training, and that's not on them, that's on us. So this is another item that we will make sure 100% that they are able to be trained in, but we spoke to the company about making sure the ease of use and the day-to-day, I don't want to say messing with the settings, but there's settings and things like that. And it's not the only units in the school that we need to make sure that we know how to maintain. That was clearly part of what we discovered in this process.
And in the MOU, this is kind of going to be, these kinds of things are going to be addressed directly with responsibility.
Absolutely,
and
yep.
it's
And we've already started those talks, which is, I think, we're already moving quite along on that. That's going to be better days ahead on that one.
So go ahead.
I was going to have a different question. You're going to talk about the purifiers?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I just want to make sure that whatever materials, filters, or whatever you have to have in order to maintain this, these are in your operating budget for
Correct.
next year?
Yep.
Do you have an estimate of what the cost of that is?
I think, I can't tell you off the top of my head.
We can follow up with that,
I
though.
do know that we have a number, but again, I wasn't the person who spoke, so I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
In general, the filters aren't big dollars, because we
No.
have other vents that have filters that have to be changed on a quarterly or a twice-a-year basis, so. But if you want that, we can certainly provide that.
No, I'm just trying to get a sense, is
Yeah.
this $100, is it $1,000?
Oh, no, I
Oh,
think
I don't
it's
think so.
maybe a couple $100,
Okay.
like
No, that's
nothing,
fine.
Yeah.
nothing insane at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
so again,
Yeah.
I know even less than him.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good that you're sitting next to each
I don't
other.
even know enough to be dangerous.
No, it's good questions.
Final one, and this is probably just clarification. I just wanted to check in that the Maynard Public Schools payroll for overtime,
Yeah.
is it in the first list we got in March, it was a list of all these people and how much time they spent. That is that number?
That number.
Just,
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure I knew
Yep.
where it came from. Thanks.
And then actually, on a similar thing, I think there are two items, but maybe I missed something, that's DPW overtime.
Yep.
Is that stuff that's charged to the school department now,
Yep.
Mike?
Yeah, so it's overtime for so the DPW, there are certain positions that will work within the schools, during the day if they allow, but, because of requests at Green Meadow that things be done after hours or whatever, when they have to come in after hours, they charge us for the overtime.
Yeah, they're basically a vendor at that
I just
point.
wanna make sure the
Yeah.
reserve fund's gonna wind up in the right
You get an
place.
actual invoice.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they're,
we actually pay them like with a check.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they give us an invoice and we pay them with a check.
it's a very
to have-
local vendor.
To have a paper trail.
Okay.
So, so I was looking at phase 4 here. So the replacement of the ceiling tiles and grid. So you have that not starting until July 1.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well,
It might be before that.
I have to think it, so originally, we were trying to figure out, there's different things that are within Green Meadow that are rented over the summer, so we were trying to think of different timeframes. But I'm actually gonna go back on that 7/1 date, because we closed down Green Meadow for the last 2 weeks of June, where this work was going to take place. So when I originally put the 7/1 number in it, we hadn't gotten confirmation that we were gonna close for those last 2 weeks of June. So we really are planning on.
So here's where I'm going with this.
I know,
7/1, the
because
money's
it's the
gone.
next year, yeah.
Okay.
Get it.
So we won't have money for you.
Mhm.
So if there's, for example, I'm looking at the ceiling tiles.
Mhm.
The ceiling tiles can be ordered and stored somewhere.
Oh,
where they'd be
absolutely. Oh,
safe.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, for
you
sure.
see where I'm going with
Yep.
this.
No, and these are good
That's why
questions.
I wanted to clarify that I was going back those 2 weeks.
And I've been
Yeah.
asking the July 1st questions for months, like,
Yeah.
let's make sure, I mean, Lowell was in the news for blowing that. and
Yeah.
People's
Yeah,
heads rolled,
although-
so.
I mean,
We can-
assuming town meeting appropriates the
Mm-hmm.
money, we do lose our spending authority over that money June 30th,
Right,
but it goes back to free cash.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna spend it on something else, and we could, do a similar process next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, if it fits and it makes sense to do it, by all means, let's get it done.
Mm-hmm. right,
But let's not do anything foolish.
right.
Right, let's not rush, I get it.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
totally-
Oh,
We
yeah,
have to
yeah.
do
No, we
this
want to give
at
you good
fall town
numbers,
meeting
for
to
sure.
Appropriate more money.
Sure.
We should go that route.
Right,
Okay.
So,
right.
Yep.
And I know one thing, and this might not be the time to mention it, I know Michelle is working with Assabet Valley and Minuteman possibly to see if any of the students, this is right up their alley, and we do
Right.
a lot of work with them. So we can't guarantee, because we don't know if they do their project coursework time over the summer, but if there's any way we can get them in to kind of help out with the labor costs, again, I like to see when it finally happens, but that would be some more good news to deliver. So we're certainly going to try.
Might be good to see if laws allow that.
Oh, yeah, we'll
But
check
they-
it all.
They already do. I actually.
They know, I mean, they have a whole program, so.
Since I last talked to Dawn, I actually have gotten, I think I've said before, I'm pretty good friends with the superintendent and
Union
business
labor laws
manager.
in Massachusetts are fairly strong. So.
Yeah.
But I think didn't they rebuild one of the bathrooms at Town Hall,
They
too?
do, they do.
They do
work
this stuff all the
throughout The town, quite often, so.
So, it might not be big, but every bit helps.
Yep.
Okay, you asked another question. I guess that's all the question I had on the spreadsheet. You all have any?
Nope.
Any other questions?
Actually, not on the spreadsheet per se, but since you're here and I wanted to throw this out too. The idea that there would be money set aside for getting help to understand the envelope of the school better and what the priorities are.
Yep.
I think relative to this July 1st and everything else, is a difficulty understanding and whether or not it's an unanticipated, reserve fund kind of thing. But what is the thinking on that, and when you would pull the trigger on trying to go forward with a request for that kind of, or budgeting for that kind of work?
In which
So-
manner? So budgeting for it if we can't procure it through the reserve
Well,
fund?
Right now, it's not in this list, right?
That's true, yeah, exactly,
so
because
that's why-
it's questionable whether you would consider it an unexpected, you've got certain thresholds to meet. I don't know if I had a chance to send it electronically, so I'm happy to just pass out a letter. It's an explanation from the Green Meadow Future Committee about what that $50,000 recommendation is, so I don't expect you to necessarily read it right now, but I'm happy to pass this out. And then I invited Megan to speak to it if you had any questions, but just, the overall intent is to understand the larger picture of that building so we can make good use of money. I think one of the examples to me, in layman's terms, is, we're putting forth an article at town meeting to spend $100,000 on various building school town roofs. In layman's term, I kind of understand what that means, patching things instead of actually putting the bigger chunks of money in. A Green Meadow roof, I think, would be $1.9 million. So the 50,000, I believe, and I don't want to speak to it, I will ask Megan since she was there, this will help us spend our money more wisely. I think it's up to you folks to do your due diligence about what pots of money you might suggest. We'll certainly be thinking the same way. But I spoke to the chair and just, I basically, should we talk about it since we're all together? And then it's really up to you folks whether you think it qualifies for your process, which I don't know that process, and what exactly is unexpected. We have great conversations about little, different line items, but this is another example. So, so I'm just going to pass this out, and then I might call on Megan if she's still here. So, and then we can.
We want to finish questions on the spreadsheet or before?
Well, so I think, I guess my proposal would be, this ought to go on the spreadsheet. This is what I had said. Whether we rule on it or not is obviously a different question. But this came in, it came into to the school committee only last Thursday at their public hearing. So it hadn't really had a chance to go in. So from my perspective, and I'm not suggesting that we should, this is something that we have time to look at. But the reason why I find it compelling is we're doing a bunch of work to the inside of the buildings. And, that was necessitated in part by the fact that the roof is compromised. And so this particular project is to have somebody come in and do a full assessment on what they called, what Josh and Megan are calling the building envelope, which then, takes obviously a look at the roof, but also other systems that get the water from the roof out. And keep out, such as the windows and so forth, to make recommendations. And these recommendations would go into presumably some capital request. So, you know, some of us might see that as extraordinary and unforeseen, and others, may not, but certainly, so.
And just,
Maybe-
sorry.
did you
Just,
want-
can I make one comment? And I think just in the big picture, based on the timelines and the meetings, you are the first folks we're seeing since getting the report. The process we're following is, the group is doing a wonderful job vetting and making great recommendations, and Josh is able to contribute with his building level expertise in Newton. So the process is, they will vote on their recommendations, it will come to school committee, and we will then vote, and then at that point, we have sort of our marching orders. So we voted to support finding funding for this project, this 50,000 in professional services. So finding the funding. And that's, that sort of opens the door. So you're our first stop. We'll also be speaking with the selectmen, and I've already spoken to the Greg, the town administrator. So it's just, it's a new request, and we can debate whether it's warranted or not. My personal opinion is it is, and then it's our job it's our job as a school committee to look for the funding. So we happen to be seeing you. It's a great time to open the conversation, but that's kind of why it's breaking news isn't the right word, but you know what I mean. It's new information, but it's valuable.
So, just for my own personal opinion on this, because we haven't discussed this either, but a lot like when the fire station said we want another chunk of funds, and a very big chunk of funds to move to another phase of the fire station building committee, we said, what's the funding source if you get approved? Because you're going to want to move forward right away.
Right.
This, to me, is inextricably tied to the 1.9 million and finding a way to do that, because if we're going to spend that, we ought to make sure the whole envelope is intact to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to get the budget subcommittee back together and
Right.
talk about that, because I think that is related to decisions we're making in FY20.
Absolutely.
So, so that's a valid, so that's a valid comparison in some ways.
Sorry.
That's a valid comparison in some ways. I guess what I would say is, part of what we're trying to look at here is a range of options. So it's not just, so the recommendations that might come out of this study might be, here's a way forward, not just, the replacing the roof. Replacing the roof might be one option, might end up being the only option, but if there are other options.
Mm-hmm.
So while, so again, the comparison with the fire station, we said, before you go and do the plans, we want to know there's a funding source. It's because we knew how much that was going to
You're right.
cost.
It was more
Okay?
defined.
Whereas this one, we might have year one plan, and the roof might be at year 5, and, what have you. So I think that, personally, I think from a perspective, I would like to know what our options are, our no kidding options are relative to taking care of that building. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would echo what Ken said. I think this is a lot less than the fire station was looking for, too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, but
So
1.9
this to me
million
is just an
isn't like,
investment in knowing our options.
so, I will admit, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, in that my personal opinion is that back in whatever it was, 2013, when we asked for 700, 800,000 to repair.
836.
Thank you. To do a significant repair of the Green Meadow roof, and we decided we weren't going to do it because it wasn't enough to do a complete replacement.
Yeah.
I mean, this is anecdotal to some extent,
Yeah.
right? What are the actual numbers? What are the actual options? And you're absolutely right about that. But I think maybe I could rephrase it and say that if the option comes in that you need to put a full, new roof on that building to protect that asset for 15 or 20 years, whatever the number, if that is the final right choice, I want to know that we've got a plan for what would that mean in terms of our capital funding, and how are we preparing for that in light of also needing a fire station. Those things, I think, they're not intractable things to look at and start saving for, and I know that that'll cause very difficult discussions, but I just don't think don't get me wrong, I have nothing against the 50,000 to find out what the envelope priorities are, but I feel strongly that one of them may be likely a much bigger, you know, bond for debt exclusion or whatever, however we decide to do it, to be able to get up to something close to $2 million.
Right, but to me, it's, we spend the 50K to lay out the options. I mean, we know we have a deficiency with Green Meadow, that the 50,000 helps us figure out and somewhat get community and school committee buy-in that, you know, we have other priorities and we're trying to do something to make Green Meadow last 20 years. Or it's 10 years, or it's, you know, we look at it and we say, geez, it's only gonna last 5 years, let's not spend $2 million on the roof. And, you know, we have to reprioritize other things. But I think,
But, so, you see what you're saying there is that you have to look at all the priorities and what the nearest term ones are that we have to do, and with some finite funds. If one of them if it turns out you have to do something about that within 5 years, I wanna know that and start planning for it.
but
And
doesn't this get us there, or get us
it,
closer?
it's a longer discussion, and
Okay.
I think what it's tied to is a need to project those costs together, not project by project.
So I think you're right. You know, you said, maybe I'm jumping the gun. I think you are encouraging a prudent mindfulness of the fact that, you know, after the $50,000 study comes decisions, and those decisions might be, you know, expensive enough that it's gonna entail capital. I'm also wondering, you know, if we had an expert come in, might have a plan that sits there and says, well, yeah, you definitely need to replace the roof, but here's a set of interim steps that, you know, delays that for a few years while you gather that money up. Right now, I think my concern is that we're putting a bunch of money to the inside of the building and zero on the roof. And, you know, I don't wanna sit here and replace a bunch of tiles, only to sit there and find us buying another $13,000 worth of tiles next year.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's not store those tiles when you buy
Bite
them
your tongue.
in the wrong place in the building.
Yeah.
So, I realize that we're not gonna solve all of those issues here. I think what the pulse is that everybody, well, I'm not sure everybody, but in general, the agreement is that we need to understand what we're gonna do and plan for that, make sure we pick the right option. No argument.
Yeah.
I think that in parallel to that, very soon, we've gotta get a little bit more disciplined about starting to stash away some money for these kinds of things. And this is only one of them.
That's a big discussion.
Well, it is, but I said that I'm jumping the gun because we tend to do these things in a little bit of a vacuum, and we don't have enough of that discussion about where are we gonna find those sources of funds. So, anyway.
So, you know,
Soapbox.
so I certainly agree, Bob, and we talk about, you know, doing some of this at the budget subcommittee level, representing our boards and then bringing it back to the boards. And I just think that, so that is all valid. I'm going to put it right here because I also think the discussion tonight is we need to be ready for town meeting as well. So just bringing it back to sort of the short term is I think we need to understand if we're going to include the 50 on top of this 529. So we are all three boards, Board of Selectmen, you folks and the school committee are on the same page with what we're proposing to the residents. So I'm not trying to push you in one direction or the other, certainly. But that's, I think, what we need to, I think that's something that you folks should have some time to deliberate on tonight, because we have to go into town meeting with a plan.
Agreed.
So,
Wild agreement.
Well, and I feel, so I would just say, I feel as though we have a plan. Whether that 50,000 is on it or not on it, there's a plan. And so if somebody stands up in town meeting and says, $610,000, what in heaven's name is that all going for? You know, we can sit here and say, look, we have discussed this and we have a good idea what the money is going for, and, you know, so we feel that there's a prudent plan forward, which is something that, you know, prior to our initial meeting, I didn't feel as though we had, so.
and that's just what I sort of wanted to clarify before we adjourn at some point tonight. I just want to make sure that your committee has a chance to weigh in on this being eligible for funds that you will approve.
Yeah, I mean, I
So.
think that question may well come up at town meeting. I mean, as these
What's that?
numbers get, will the finance committee approve the 50K as part of the 610?
And we can't answer that at town meeting. I'm not gonna answer it at town meeting, because I'm not gonna speak for the board, and the board's not gonna vote on it there, because we don't have.
But we're kind of representing that we're gonna approve all this stuff.
Oh, heavens no,
Well, I mean, we came up with the 610 from something.
we came up with the 610, because the 610, we sat there and subtracted a bunch of stuff from free cash, and it ended up being at 610, which is why it was 610 and not 600 or 620.
A little bit, but it was.
Correct,
also-
Mike?
We basically, the 610 came from.
An addition.
Came from Michelle.
Yes.
We were reviewing it, and that's the number we ended up
Yeah.
using.
Yeah.
The
So
number was.
it's based on an initial estimate from the school.
The initial estimate that
Yes.
we originally put in
Yeah.
was 300,000.
Right.
By the time we spoke to Michelle.
Correct.
Greg and I looked at it and said,
It had doubled.
yes,
We got
it's
610.
Right.
It could have been 700, it could have been some other number, but we based it upon a piece of paper and conversations I had with Michelle.
So, I mean, I think it's a valid question at town meeting to say, you know, you now have a set of fairly specific things that total 530, and you have room to pay for the 50K. Are you considering that part of reserve fund transfer? I mean, we're not gonna vote on it at town meeting, but,
And we're not gonna vote on it before town meeting, because we only
That's
have one
true.
meeting left.
yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I'm fairly comfortable standing and saying,
So here's
you know,
how.
this is why we
here-
need the 610.
Here's
We have
how I would
530.
answer it, okay? You know, we've had 2 discussions now, very robust discussions, I would say. And I'm comfortable going and saying, we have a plan here that we're looking at, and we're not going to spend the $610,000 imprudently. We're sitting here reviewing each reserve fund transfer, just like we do every one, and we will do it on its merits, and we will do it with within the context of an overall plan. I don't know that we can say anything more than that.
Okay.
I think it might help if we explain when we do these reserve fund transfers, like, are we gonna go through line by line and do each one, or are we gonna do a big chunk of money? I think maybe giving a little context on how reserve fund transfers work might be helpful.
Okay.
At town meeting, you're saying?
I mean, if someone asks,
Yeah.
or we could talk about it here, or whatever makes sense, but I feel like,
Well, at town meeting, yeah, we know how it works.
right,
Let's not do it here.
yeah,
So does everybody else here, with the
That's what I
exception
mean.
of Josh, who broke all kinds of land speed records to get here.
yeah.
He missed the discussion.
Right.
We used your name in vain quite often before we got there.
That's all right, I'm used to it. Very.
Megan said all the good ideas came from her.
She's right,
So
Okay.
I guess.
Your question.
We should be prepared to answer.
I don't wanna
Yeah.
be, I'm not trying to be cagey about it, but the fact is that the committee has not voted. And while some of us have been, you know, more vocal about,
But it would be fair to say the committee would consider it within its discretion to approve that?
oh, yeah, absolutely, why else, yeah, sure,
one.
then why else would
Okay.
we be
Fair
having the meeting, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
So, within our discretion,
Yep,
to consider that as a reserve fund transfer request, in
gotcha.
addition to these.
Okay.
But it's new, so.
It is
we're not-
new, yep.
We're not committing.
Just to provide full context, as someone who's at all the meetings as requested, I know that the Board of Selectmen, one member in particular, is very nervous about scope creep in such a big number of so I'm sort of representing that I heard that at a meeting, I respect that opinion, and I don't want it, you know, I want to make sure that we're taking everything into account, because at some point, we're going to have to now decide, it sounds like, whether we ask at town meeting for this $50,000. So that's, I'm trying to really remove the ambiguity and make sure that all boards have a chance to weigh in. So I respectfully feel I still don't know from the Finance Committee. And that's okay, because it's new information, don't get me wrong, you might need some time, I'm not
It's because we're trying to make sure we do our diligence not to. have
completely,
scope creep,
yep, no, exactly,
That it's within the bounds of what we intended when we put the 610 there.
right.
So, I think,
Yeah, I mean, I think we are in agreement, I'm just trying to respectfully represent what I heard at that meeting from another board.
So I think, I mean, I think a next step would be for you all to say, yes, we want to add this to the school committee.
Right,
To say, yes, we want to add this to the list, to the plan. And, you know, because I'm presuming, you know, you said, we're committing to finding money.
Exactly.
Michelle's very good, maybe she'll find $50,000 that's sitting around somewhere.
The pressure's
And
on.
In which case, you don't even have to
No,
come
and
to
I think
us.
that,
But assuming that there isn't an extra 50,000
Right.
sitting around in the FY 2020 MPS budget.
That is correct.
You know, not to, well,
Go ahead.
one route might be to amend the free cash article on the floor.
Right.
And break out the 50.
Right.
And essentially, we don't need the whole 610 based on this list, and you could take it out of that.
Exactly, and that's sort of my point, is there are multiple funding sources, even at this late hour. We can amend things, even if we needed 25 from free cash and 25 that's in the roof
Also would
fund.
give you more freedom to carry the 50 forward and not
Right.
have to deal with it. before
Exactly.
The spending authority wouldn't end.
Exactly.
You'd have an article with funding.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's, like I said, we committed to finding the funding. We've all been through this before. There's always multiple pots of money with different sets of rules. And since we were going to be here, it made sense to have the discussion and get your input. So that's very helpful. And I can say that certainly the school committee would want to,
What?
It's not the worst idea you've ever had.
all right.
Okay. Although I always say that to people, that's not the worst idea. Backhanded compliments.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, we probably ought to hear from Josh since, as I said, he broke all land speed
And
records.
Michelle never
trying
got to
get
speak, no matter what we said.
Actually,
Sorry, gave him the front seat.
Peter said what I was gonna say about free cash, so that's awesome. I do think it provides more flexibility, but I also don't want to step on toes. Funding sources are clearly not within our purview at all on the committee. But if it gives, I understand there were a couple comments before we got here, and very good comments, good questions about the process and this investment. And I think if it, just on the record for the FinCom, but also for anybody else that might be listening, or for the record for our future meetings, I think what's important to recognize is that even if we were to, let's say, for whatever reason, we decided we were going after a new facility, and I'm not suggesting that, but if we were, best case scenario, you're 6 years out. You can't wait 6 years to do anything with any capital work at the Green Meadow School. Now, the extent of capital work that you need to do will be determined based on the level of time that we need to get out of this. Roof replacements are right now running about $20 to $25 a square foot. You have 76,000 square feet, about half of which is flat roof and half of which is flat rubber membrane, half of which is asphalt shingle. Right now, I would estimate a total roof replacement cost between $1.7 and $2.3 million. I understand 2.5 number is out there. I think it's a good budget number, but based on the latest bids that I'm seeing in a more expensive, the closer you get to Boston, the more expensive things get, I would be comfortable at that range that I just mentioned. That being said, there are other elements that we need to look at. You have a Tectum roof panel system, you have a corrugated metal roof panel system. Those are the support structures that are underneath the building. Those need to be evaluated. Tectum panel systems typically have anywhere from 2 to 5 pounds per square foot of added capacity, meaning above and beyond what it's designed for, full static winter load. And so you need to factor all that in when you're taking off an old system and putting a new one on. And that would be part of that report. So, not only are we looking at the envelope and protecting the investments that we have already made and are about to make, but we're also looking at the structural analysis to make sure that we're in a good spot going forward. That's something that I wouldn't in my own professional capacity be comfortable telling you that it would be a good idea to wait that much longer. But very important is that this report will generate options. It will generate square foot cost estimates for the different types of approaches you can make. One very realistic option is after they do the analysis, they may come back and say the flat portion, the rubber roof, really should be replaced. So you might be looking at half of the range that I was telling you. They may say a section of the flat roof should be replaced. They may say the whole roof should be replaced. But we will make sure that it's written up with options and how many years you get out of it, because I do think that there's a longer term conversation about the future of Green Meadow.
So, do we factor what we think the long-term, the rest of the life cycle of the building has to be, or do they?
So life cycle cost analysis, there is factors that you have to put in, because the consultant can't tell you when the town's going to afford to be able to do a project. The consultant can't predict when MSBA is going to partner with the town. The consultant can tell you how long building elements will last. They can tell you how long something is warranted for. They can tell you how much longer you have left on a particular system. But those are things that we need to influence. So they will give you, like if we said we want to do an overlay patch of half of the rubber roof, right now I can tell you that the warranty for that, based on the scope that I most recently did, was 15 years. Other products are 10 years. Some are as little as 8. If you do a full-scale replacement, you could do a 20-year warranty. And a new roof typically lasts you 30 years. You know, part of the conversation when we start talking about a full-scale roof replacement really is the future of Green Meadow. If you're going to make a 30-year investment, you do need to talk about that.
So I guess one other thing, two things actually. One, the study that you're suggesting or proposing would only be looking at the building envelope. It would not be looking at other systems such as the life cycle, the remaining life of like the heating system and things like that.
At this stage, no. So there was a TAPE report done in 2006, and one of the things that I think is good and bad is that because we really haven't done much at Green Meadow since 2006, that report is still very accurate with the systems within. The roof system is a little different. It is not aged well, I guess is the politest way I can put it. This report is strictly focused on the envelope, the structural analysis, and I would say to some extent the exhaust fans up top, just because we got to flash around them. So there could be some details that we look at there. But
so the other point I guess I made is even if they suggested replacing the entire roof, we could as a town decide to replace a portion of the roof, that portion that's the flat part that's the most serious, that has been patched a zillion times and so forth.
exactly, and a good consultant, if you lay out those expectations ahead of time that we're looking for an a la carte menu, they will do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very common.
Okay. So, all right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So did he say it right, Megan?
I guess.
Okay. Anything to add that he didn't add in?
Well, one thing I asked him for, so I guess I'll just read his
Yeah, go
email
for it.
about, because Bob, I think you were asking about like timing in terms of how long, so, and that, in the different stages of, of taking this on. So assuming that we get funding, like what do the stages look like and how long, can we expect to get a deliverable back? He said if we started today, the bulk of the study could be done in 7 to 9 weeks. So, so just to get, because I know you were asking about that earlier,
Yeah.
so
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I called you Michelle.
that's okay. I'm used to it. My sister's Maureen and my mom was Marianne, so we
Oh.
got all
Yeah.
3 M names. So.
So I guess, one of the things that concerns me, so I think your idea has merit in terms of separating that out. One of the things that concerns me is that we don't have all of the things done yet. And so if we take that 50,000 out of the 610, then we lose the flexibility of, if something comes up that we need, all of a sudden, we won't have that money there.
Right,
So-
but in some ways, we'd be saying, we wanna spend the 50K on this, no matter what comes up. That
Yeah.
it's that much of a priority. So,
We could say that ourselves, though. We could
We
sit
could.
there as
Yeah.
a finance committee, say, yep, this is definitely something that we're gonna support. So, I'm just voicing a concern, about that, so.
Sorry, could you just explain one more time, if we were to keep it within the 610 and make a decision for under a reserve fund?
No, I said if
transfer
we take
request.
it out of the 610 and put the 610 now down to 550, now we only have 550 to spend. So if something extraordinary comes up between now and the end
Yeah,
of the
okay.
fiscal year, we don't have that flexibility.
Okay.
So,
did you have additional questions?
Yeah, I had one other question.
You did.
On the spreadsheet with all the numbers, I might have missed it. The DLS fine, that was gonna be used to offset cost, right? Is that what it was? Am I misunderstanding?
Well, yeah, so like, what happened is they fined us, and then
Right.
what they did is they redacted their fine because we were spending so much money on all of this already. So we had to send DLS the invoices
The
of the
proof.
money that we have been spending on this issue. And so with that, they said, you already have kind of spent your fines, basically.
So the fine was going to be, I think, $45,000,
$42,000.
$42,000. If for some reason we'd only had to spend $20,000 on this project, which is absurd, we would have a different problem. But we are spending so much that they basically, it's almost like, I keep calling it like time served, right?
Yeah.
So we had to provide the proof, you can't just say you're going to do the work, obviously. So we provided that proof, and that's what helped us, that's what helped us have them remove the specific intent, and also just putting the money towards it is more of a time served because we're spending so much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out if something was previously earmarked.
It was in their earlier list.
Yeah.
We put it on there in case it, yeah, so,
This one. Okay.
so we removed it as a potential cost.
Hours and we took it off too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not on this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I was
Right.
confused.
Because we put it on there as a potential cost, because at
Yeah.
that time, we didn't have the decision.
Okay.
So it was a potential cost that we've removed.
All right.
And I think the town is doing it the same way.
Yep.
And actually, Mike, just to be clear on that, the town spending its money, our transfer to the reserve fund would count?
No, they've already spent the money.
Who?
Town has?
No, the
I
town?
think Peter's question is, Mike has to prove that they have spent at least $20,000, and how do you do that?
Yeah, we got a letter from DLS saying that the fine, and we were fined basically, when we don't have to pay it. It's part of this whole concept.
Theirs is not,
Will school expenses count on the town,
Theirs-
for the town fine?
theirs does not require
All I know
$20,000.
is
Oh, it does not?
No, all, it requires them to carry, the town is required to carry out certain things, and if they do that, which they're already in the process of doing.
Okay,
then the
sorry,
fine is-
okay, thank you.
So, all right. Any other questions on the spreadsheet? BJ? We'll take a few minutes of public comment if somebody has, we'll take a couple questions if somebody has it. Otherwise, we'll.
Yeah, I just want to speak in support of the 50,000, help you out with the reserve funding if you choose to go in that direction. So what was discussed at the Green Meadow Future Committee is that part of this envelope survey is covering the structural integrity of the roof. That purpose is to make sure that we're not going to, that the root causes that have caused so much damage already are in a state that are not going to cause further damage or regress the repairs that have been made. So this is in response to the emergency. You could consider a response to the emergency that we had, and in effect, it's like an all clear signal or a all stable signal, I guess would be an apt description.
And would you just identify yourself?
Oh, yes, sorry, Kevin Stone.
Okay. All right, moving on to our smaller topic, which is the budget. Did you have any updates on the FY 2020 budget?
Nothing has changed since our public meeting. I can say what we announced. We needed to trim $100,000 from the operating budget, and that will be accomplished through changes to the music program that will result in a savings of 1 full-time employee. That's the biggest chunk of savings. The result of that, in terms of the students, is the strings and chorus programs will become after-school programs, but not fee-based. We are going to be renting out 2 more classrooms from Fowler to the CASE program, so that's revenue offset. We have an open special education position that we will not be filling going into the year. We've moved some occupational therapy provided to some students, more of an in-house provided by an existing employee as opposed to an outside vendor coming in. So some realignment of responsibilities there. So, and we're always looking at when it comes to some of the folks like OT, PT, psychology services that we provide in the schools, that's a moving target, depending on what children need according to their individual education plans. So, so everyone got together and they brought their parts of the budget that they thought they could trim going into the new year, and knock on wood, it's been worse. So.
All right. Well, I want to, just for myself, I'm sure the other members can say this, I want to express appreciation for the hard work you all have put in well, overall with the Green Meadow School. It's been a lot of work, obviously, I don't need to tell you all, so I appreciate that, so I just want to express that publicly.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for rescheduling the meeting. I know we were aiming for our April vacation week, and we appreciate you being
Yeah.
flexible. So we wanted to come with thorough
also-
answers when we weren't on vacation.
Yeah, and I appreciate the work that you put into putting this plan together. I know that was a lot of work, but I think it will help us to go into town meeting sort of saying, this $610,000, you know, we have a plan for it, we know what it's being spent on. Obviously, we'll be sitting here looking at each reserve fund transfer on a, you know, individual basis, but within the context of a larger whole. So, if there are any changes to this, I would appreciate if you would
Sure.
send
course.
that to us.
Yep.
So obviously with the 50,000, if you all, Dawn, are going to recommend that be added to the list, that would
Yes.
be something. But if there are any other changes.
Yeah, I would consider that added at this point. I'll still talk to the.
School committee.
We voted on it last Thursday, so I think we're fine. I can vote, we can vote again. I think it's going to be moot, though. It was a 4-0 vote, so. We voted to find the funds. You're offering a way to find the funds. I think we're clear. It doesn't mean I'm not going to still have a conversation.
I'm offering a possible way. Obviously, I can't speak.
I know.
on
Oh, no,
behalf of
I
the
know.
entire
But I'm also going to have a conversation with Greg Johnson about if there's anything remaining in the roof, it's not called the roof repair line item, but we have some funds. If there's something in there that hasn't been expended, and then we need a small amount of free cash and we alter the article at town meeting, it could be that we have a different answer for you. But right now, we're all together. I think we should plan to put it on the spreadsheet and include it. We'll have those other follow-up conversations, and we'll see where we go.
If we have 100,000 in roof repair, why couldn't that go towards that?
And that's it. I think that that's another thing to look at.
There are other roofs that Greg has his eye on.
Yeah, was it 12 buildings, 15 buildings?
There's also money left over in that account.
And that's what I'm talking about what Mike is
There's
saying.
a capital account for
Oh, from the old
Green Meadow roof
From the old
repairs.
Green Meadow repair?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, we haven't,
There's
there's,
money left in it. I can't.
think
I don't
it's-
know.
30,000.
36
I think it's 36,000,
Right.
yeah.
So maybe that's, maybe that gets us almost all the way there. So,
Yet another reason
yeah,
not to have
yeah, the
it
conversations are
separated out.
certainly going to continue.
Yep, actually, you're right, yeah.
Transfers are made all
You
the
should just
time.
close that one down back to free cash.
No, we're going to use it for the
We have been
50,000. I think we
we
just
have-
decided.
Listen, no.
Really what it was supposed
The
to be.
reserve fund transfer request for the balance.
Yeah, the 14. I mean, we're certainly trying to minimize all the asking.
Yep. All right, anything else for the cause? Last, going. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you guys very
Thank you.
much.
You all who want to remain and listen to us talk about articles on the warrant, you're welcome to do so. It has to do with utility poles.
Take it as a sign of our full faith in
You
you.
guys don't want to talk
Thank
about
you.
that?
I think that's a compliment. We'll take it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Good job, Michelle.
All right, updates. Conversations outside, please, folks. Brian, conversations outside, please. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so updates, I was made aware, I got an email from the town administrator that, Aaron has resigned. McCloskey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So,
Which only by reputation, I don't work with him that closely, but. Yeah, seems like,
so the other thing that I wanted to say is, that, I was also informed about, the $20,000, dollar fine for the town has, I don't know exactly what the verb is, it's been essentially vacated, canceled. Agree that the $20,000 would be used for operations and maintenance for a HERA, so I guess it is that. Respondents will provide a complete list of damaged asbestos-containing materials, complete any and all repairs by September 1st. Corrective actions must be addressed to them within 30 days. Respondents will provide all invoices, paid receipts, and so forth. I think the other thing, he was saying something, the fact that there was training that was being mandated as well. Oh, corrective actions. I guess that comes under the corrective actions. In terms of the training and so forth had to be done. So, so those are the updates that I have. So in your packets, on pages 2 and 2 through 4, I included behind the agenda, 2 items, one on the Rockland Avenue petition. I got this just today. I know you guys haven't had a chance to look at it. But basically, it outlined the costs. This is for the Rockland Avenue acceptance. I guess in particular there, he's saying they don't believe that they're required to pave it. If we do so, if it's accepted, he attached some quotes estimating $500,000 to pave it. So obviously not a small amount. The only real cost is there's some legal work in preparation and for the notifications. They already had engineering plans, so they don't need to redo that. There is a layout hearing on May 9th. Did I forward that to you all?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So that's at 7 o'clock, next Thursday, the 9th. And basically, they're just presenting the engineering plans to the public to be made aware of what is being considered for acceptance. Those plans are attached to the email that I forwarded out to you all. And then there's some other details about that. So that's, that pertains to one of the outstanding warrant articles, 20, was it, no, 12 maybe, let me look at my list.
Yeah, it's 12.
12,
Yep.
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
You
Yelling out
complaining
the
I
wrong
didn't have them
number.
memorized?
12, right.
So, okay, then the other one has to do with the utility pole, so I admit being a bit of a geek on the, on this one.
Oh, it's great.
So I was a little tired of not knowing what they were talking about there. So basically, there was let me make sure I'm saying this. The Supreme Judicial Court decision, Boston Edison Company versus Town of Bedford. And this was from 2005. And so I looked it up, and I had included this in an email out to you all so you could review it before the meeting. But essentially, it's pretty clear that fundamentally what it says is that the law that the Commonwealth law, the Mass General Law, Chapter 164, Section 34B, replacement of existing poles, which I have on there. Basically what they're saying is that there is no enabling provision in there that allows the town to do enforcement individually on their own. And as a matter of fact, the Commonwealth, the state legislature, has required the town, the Department of Telecommunications and Energy to put together a report, which they did in 2003, and they are apparently consistently updating that, but they're tracking these things, and they are taking care of the double pole problem in Massachusetts, essentially is what.
Slowly.
They're not.
Slowly, so I understand that, but
Yes,
if
I
you
get
wanna
it.
go argue with the SJC, you're more than welcome to do that, but they basically concluded that given this, there's no statute that grants authority, and in fact, the legislation has given, the department its directive to do the study and report on double pole issues, so they're essentially saying the department is taking care of it, and the towns have no ability. So it's an unenforceable bylaw, and so that's the reason for the recommendation, so. So, I would make a motion that we recommend Article 24.
Which deletes that part of the bylaw.
Which deletes that, I think it's bylaw chapter 38, utility poles.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Bob. Any further discussion? Any last hurrahs for,
Don't you think we ought to
Town
talk
bylaw.
about the kind of pole it is or something like that?
yeah,
We can,
there you go.
sort of draw this out a little bit
All
more.
right.
I mean, this is a very important issue.
Yes, it is an important issue, particularly if you've got a double pole in your yard. So, hearing none, all those in favor? Oh, I thought we had an opposition
I was
there.
about to, but I can't, I just don't like the
6-0.
home rule process. I don't like.
Do you have a suggestion?
No, this is, the italics is quoted from the court case?
The italics, yes, the italics is, those are quotes from the court case.
So, you know, not being a lawyer, but I play one on TV. Why don't we have our own bylaw? We don't need to enforce Mass General law, we'll just have our own bylaw to enforce.
So I think what the SJC would say, there are some laws that you're given, the towns are given enforcement responsibility, and
Yes.
others that they're not. All right, I will tell you, I only got the Rockland Avenue stuff, today. I've not had a time to review it. I'm satisfied that, you know, that, I mean, I wouldn't begrudge it, but I think we, you know, there's nothing that says we have to, there's nothing that says we have to vote on this today. We could do this at the 13th, and
Yep.
I'm, you know, I'm fine with that.
We're happy that
Okay.
the utilities don't need to be upgraded and all that. They didn't even seem to talk about that very much.
So, there's gonna be a layout on the 9th, Tom. I assume that you'll be there along with me
On the 9th,
on the 9th.
where will that be?
I'll send you
Hey,
a,
you know,
it's in the
I'm up to
notice.
the challenge, pal.
I'll send you an invite through Match.com.
But you have to buy him dinner first.
I'll buy you dinner. I tried to buy Jill dinner. She wouldn't do it.
Don't go there again.
All right.
All right.
All right. So we're gonna defer on this. Okay, I need to pull something up here.
Are those our
You didn't
last
have
two?
anything to offer up on the report?
I sent it.
You did?
It's,
Sent it to
Did you
and
send it to
everybody.
it's
everyone?
at
Okay.
7, the hearing about Rockland Ave in room 101.
Oh, that's right, it is downstairs.
Yeah,
All
the,
right.
the room downstairs.
Those are only
Yeah.
articles.
I sent it
On
at
the
6. I didn't send it at noon.
7th, you said.
On the 9th at
When I
7
get home.
PM.
All right.
So, last year, if you don't mind while I put it up, last year we did we did the recommendations and we handed them out at a town meeting, as you recall. And we put a little bit of a preamble in there about the historical status of the budget and talked a little bit at the end about some future planning that we wanted to do. And if you recall, I threw in one of the scenarios that we had done a couple of years ago saying, what would we do if we got $1 million in new revenue from 129, and how would that, if that was spread in the same apportionment of the budget, what would that look like? And our conclusion to that was that it still would not address a number of the challenges we have, the need for, putting money aside for capital, that sort of thing. So this year, I have updated the same type of thing for the previous history. I didn't put as many tables in there for you, Peter, but there are some graphs, there are tables. And then at the end, instead of that, kind of generic scenario, I took what we had done in December and January for both projection of revenue for the next 5 years and projection of expenses. But of course, when you project either, you have to make a few assumptions. The assumption that I made on revenue were all the ones that you had put together, Mike. But, for instance, there's no local, I don't have it in front of me because
The one thing that would change going forward is the local aid.
local aid.
We
So,
projected a certain amount, but that thing for based in Israel
Right.
next year is going to be flat.
right, so you've actually said no increase, so a steady, whatever the number is now for the next 5 years, that's still the same. So there are cells that can be changed. So what I did put in there was a plug to fund the fire station bond and a bond for the Green Meadow roof as a full repair. I chose 2.1 million, which is right in the middle of Josh's estimate. Not because that's our plan today, but if we do that, we can start to look at what happens to the net of revenue and expense. And it certainly looks like we'll have a challenge. I did actually add, and I wanted to get your input, whether this is legitimate or not. We've been talking about charter school funding as one of the main, one of the biggest cost drivers, along with SPED and a few other things for schools, to the tune of an increase in out of district placements of 30% a year. So my view is that's we're going to hit that 9% total awfully quick if we continue that kind of logarithmic growth. And so I said 25% flat because I was trying to say one of our scenarios could be let's find a way to reduce that and start to drop that percentage. Not necessarily, it's still more people leave, but at a much less alarming rate. But instead, you said 30%. I threw in 25% increase, but made it flat for the next 5 years, which is a huge hit. It really is. So with those three things, I left the rest of the model the way we had discussed, and I put in 4.3% increase each year for schools, which is not as much as they want. That still leaves us, by FY24 with a $3 million deficit. So that's part of the reason I wanted to have that view. I really am not just trying to alarm people and scare people. I'm trying to put out a document and get together with the tri-board subcommittee and say we need to start talking about some means of grappling with that issue. We know we need new revenue, but where is it going to come from? And if it doesn't come fast enough, what are the other options in order to be able to do the kind of things we just talked about tonight, along with the fire station, which we didn't talk about tonight. So the intent here is to put this now, we said it's pretty long. Once we put all the recommendations in, that's going to add at least 3 pages, right? Or,
This doesn't have recommendations in here?
No.
it's already whatever, 5
So we
pages.
can't print this and hand this
So,
out?
no.
can't-
So
I don't
we
think
had
we-
already talked about the fact that we would have the official version of our recommendations posted on the website, and we would print out one that had just the recommendations, the 4 recommendations that we,
Oh, that aren't in the,
that are not in the
Oh,
warrant.
yeah,
right, okay, yeah.
Right. So the idea is that still, relative to questions that may come up at town meeting and decisions we're making on free cash and the FY20 budget, to have this be a little bit more of a statement of where we stand and where we're likely to be over the next 4 years.
I like that.
Yeah. So what I don't have in there is an updated, charter school out, balance. I left the same wording that we had. I just hadn't gotten a chance to do it because I had to muck around with a spreadsheet to get FY20 to be close to the, net zero.
I'll look at it
Yeah,
tonight.
it's like $27,000 we gotta we gotta match it up. And it makes me more and more think that this clear.gov, budgeting thing could be a real help, because,
I have a meeting with them, so you know, on Friday to look at it.
yeah, that's a different
We'll
aside,
see.
but it's,
We'll come back to everybody
yeah.
as to what we feel,
Yeah.
you know.
It's still a little painful to take your revenue estimate, which is Rev 11, right, and the budget estimate, which has the expenses, which is Rev 7, combine them and make sure they tick and tie, and then do a scenario. So I never got around to even thinking about how we could graph it more better. But, so it isn't the prettiest document in the world. I'd like to tighten it up a little bit before we put it on the website for town meeting, but I wanted to have a draft available to get your inputs, review it with the budget subcommittee next Monday. Next Monday? Yeah. Because, there's the notion that we've got everything done on FY20, and I get it, that we weren't even gonna have a budget subcommittee. It would be the third month we didn't have one, which struck me as odd, because I think this kind of struggling with what are we gonna do so we're not in the same place next year? What are we gonna do about the capital needs that we're not funding even this year with $500,000 of revenue from 129? So I'm looking for you guys. You have it now in your email, and we need to at least update by Monday the charter school stuff, and then these, I think it's A through E, were last year's projections of what we wanted to focus on. And I want feedback from you. Do you think that's the right list for now, or should we modify it?
So if I could, so to clarify sort of the timeline for this, so we won't finalize this until our next meeting on the 13th. Okay, so we won't have, for example, there's lots of stuff we won't have. The budget subcommittee, we did want this on the agenda. The budget subcommittee had come back to Bob and me and said, well, we just want to talk about the $610,000. And I said, well, we're going to be talking about this at this meeting, and it's going to be a pretty short conversation, in other words. I shared Bob's concern that we were not sitting here talking about the impact of some of these things. The 610, I would just tell you, I think Bob will probably agree with this even probably more vehemently. I view this $610,000 as money of, this is money the town has, and we've sort of set it aside to do the Green Meadow School. But there's a lot of expenses on that list that I'm not ready to sit there and say yes to. Now, all the building stuff, I think it's a given that we're gonna have to pay that. That's certainly fits the bill of the extraordinary and unexpected. I think many of the instructional materials are probably along those same lines. I'm a little bit more satisfied about the air purifiers after today's discussion. I had some questions about that. I'm still not sure that I'm personally, just me, I don't know that I'm very supportive of the website stuff. So, we'll discuss these things later. Obviously, it'll be an entire board, entire committee vote, and that'll be fine. But
one of the alternatives to the website is to have an assistant principal who fields the phone calls from the citizenry. And that's a lot more expensive than a $10,000 website, I'll tell you.
Yes, well, and so we're getting to, obviously, sort of operational things that are the decisions of the school committee on how they're gonna organize the schools.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, I'm not, I think the website is, probably useful, but I think that's really for the schools to do, and I'm not sure that I'm willing to sit there and take
Oh,
ten
okay,
thousand.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were getting at.
I'm not
Yes,
sure I
okay,
wanna
agree
take
with you.
$10,000
Right.
and put it there
Yeah.
instead of leaving it in the town
Right.
coffers to be
Right.
used for a capital
Okay,
project.
okay.
So anyway, I think what Bob and I are looking for from everybody tonight is, the approach that Bob just laid out is, we're gonna sit here and talk about the FY20 budget, but that's probably not very provocative. What is perhaps a little bit more out there is this idea of telling the hard truth, which is, if we're gonna fund a fire station, which we need to, and if we're gonna fund the Green Meadow School roof like we need to, this is what these dollars look like, particularly if we don't build revenue, and particularly if we continue to bleed out with charter schools. So is that a message, you know, obviously, we're all putting our signature at the bottom of this, is that a message that you all concur, you know, we put those hard truths out there?
Well, are those the only things that we have to worry about? I mean, the long-term things, the school and the firehouse, are there other things out
Oh,
there?
absolutely. Let me be really clear what this, it isn't a plan. The projections have some, I'll call it fixed costs that aren't gonna change very much no matter what we do. In terms of, and I'm talking about the expense side now, this, some of the same general logic in the revenue that we get too, but this is just a scenario that says FY20 is as we're budgeting it. Everything after that uses a percentage change from that and/or say like a capital project. I know there's lots more capital projects than the two that we're mentioning, but all we have to do is put those two big ones on and look at the net and say, we got a problem. And I'm really passionate about this year, because this year, instead of taking some of the revenue from 129 and that 610 that we're aiming to an emergency fix, because we didn't maintain buildings, right? And now we're still falling further and further behind when, when you look out, the hardest part for me to look at is FY24 revenue and what it increases from FY23. And it's because you get $730,000 new revenue this year. It's $300,000 on a budget that keeps going up. It's not keeping pace percentage-wise, period.
Now,
And-
so more to the point, I think, is that of that 610 or whatever amount we spend, all that instructional materials wouldn't have had to be replaced. And a significant amount of the work would not have had to been done, and had to be done sort of on an emergency basis. And
Yeah, I agree.
It's
So-
pretty much mom and apple pie, but other towns do find a way to stop the craziness and find a way to start being disciplined, and it's high time we do.
now, my view is I think we need to tell the hard truth. Certainly, that's the way that Bob has written it, but,
But
we
wait,
need.
as it currently exists,
As what currently exists.
the thing you emailed out,
What about it? Oh, no, it
it
needs,
has the hard truths in it?
no, actually it
I'm
has,
missing that.
the 5-year projection on the expenses needs a little wording to go with it, but because I only finished it about 3 hours ago, I didn't get a chance to talk a little bit more, but you'll see baked into that, 2.1 million for a Green Meadow roof with a 10-year bond, because I don't know what, maybe it's 20.
So if
But
I
the other thing is the fire station, as of FY21, we start paying a bond on that.
So let me be clear. We're not voting on the exact wording. You all are
No, I
going to
know,
see
yeah.
this again. What I want to do is get feedback. What we want to do is get feedback from you on the general gist, the direction of the message, because we're comfortable at going this way. But, we don't want to sit here and continue to write it that way if it's not going to be something that's going to be acceptable to the broader committee.
Well, I have no objections. I think you guys have got it square on.
The only thing I would caution is that if, I know that the charter school is, something that we do lose a lot of money to. I feel like if you want to draw attention to it, you should be careful in the wording, so it doesn't create a herd effect where everyone's like, well, a lot of kids are leaving, well, maybe I should have my kid leave too. And I don't
Oh.
wanna encourage that,
So,
so,
yeah, it's a really good point. And I think, you know, if you looked at it yesterday, they talked about the top 15 or 10 districts.
They have something there?
Amsterdam's the second, number 2.
Behind Boston Latin?
Yeah,
Seriously?
yeah, number 2. And Acton, Boxborough, and Lincoln, Sudbury, none of those are even on that top 10. Now, so my point is, we've got some headwinds, big time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And if we're losing 30% of our students in high school to AMSA every year, I guess there's no other word to say other than it's just unsustainable, right? We just
Yeah.
can't do that. So you're right to be cautious, but I mean, all we're doing is putting a spreadsheet together and saying, whoa, that's an awful lot of money each year that isn't going to educating students that are staying in Maynard. And what are
Well,
we gonna do
so,
about that?
but it is going to educating students, but on a different scale.
Yes, yep, it's very, yeah, you're right. It needs to
Yeah.
be, there's nothing wrong with AMSA. And if people
Right.
make that choice,
I'm not
yes,
saying there's
they've got
anything wrong
choice.
with the reality, I'm just saying we might wanna be aware of our
Yeah,
messages.
no, that's a good point. Now, I will say, I mean, so, you know, part of the challenge for me is every time I hear about AMSA being number 2, my analogy is, if I was looking around for, you know, a fitness center, and I went into a fitness center with a bunch of Olympians, then, you know, everybody would sit there and say, look at that, they're all trim and fit.
Yeah.
All right, well, okay. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the right fitness center for me, okay? And I could still, you know, Maynard Public Schools has the high-quality teachers, just like AMSA, has, you know, certainly every potential for the students, you know, in terms of, you know, supporting them. So, you know,
I thought you were going a different way.
no, I'm just saying,
Yeah,
I'm just saying, I object to this idea
their
that we
fitness
ought to
center.
be sitting here, the whole grading of the schools is
Yeah.
such a crock,
Yeah, I agree with you.
okay? Because it is based on premises that have no foundation whatsoever. The
Totally
idea
agree.
here is that your kid is better served by a school where the MCAS scores are higher, and that is a
And you can
crock.
pick and choose who you bring in too, so, anyway.
Well, so the charter schools don't pick and choose, it's a lottery, so.
But in the, well, the
Yeah,
point
that's
of this is that we need to say what the hard numbers are. And the numbers that are in, that you're looking at right here, if this is it, are last year's. So I just put the table in that has the FY '20 numbers that are darn close. I took them straight out of your,
So I don't want to, I don't want to sit here and get fixated in numbers. I want to sit here and get your all's viewpoints on the message and whether we continue to work along those directions. And the feedback you provided is good, but is this a direction that otherwise, other than that feedback, you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I think we just need to be cognizant of the power that our, you know, presenting these tables
Yeah.
and things are,
yeah,
and just be aware of that.
Yeah.
yeah, it's good input.
I'm missing the harshness. So
The harshness.
if
You
I,
think we're not being harsh enough?
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, so I won't say that I've read every word of this, I have skimmed through it. And if we mean to, you know, tell hard truths, I would put them on the first page and make them simple and then explain them later.
You know,
So,
a
I mean,
good,
I think
a good
I
executive
could
summary
foresee this
paragraph
as,
would be helpful.
you know, skip the intro and say, you know, Maynard's budget this year works because we're spending 500,000 of new money that last year we said was gonna go to capital. It's not going to capital.
I like your idea. He was just saying, executive summary, you put the executive summary up first,
Oh, yeah.
you go through it, and maybe you summarize it again at the end.
Maybe,
But- But, you know, so, look, I think, I want to have some amount of data here, because I think part of this is getting people used to seeing data and saying, what's the data behind the statements that the finance committee is making?
I'm not saying we
Okay.
delete the data, I'm just saying,
All right,
if we're meaning
No.
to tell hard truths, which I support.
Let's make them clear and upfront.
Yeah, and then, you know, throw in, you know, we think we need $2 million for Green Meadow, we need 15 million for a fire station, we can't afford it.
That's a
As I
good
try
point
to tell
too.
people at work.
Yeah, that I never get in.
Short declarative sentences.
Okay,
So I sent out an email at work today, and it's like, ball's in your court, so I'd love you to help me make that short and declarative. I mean it.
When do we have to?
Well,
Yeah.
what,
this is
the
my-
data is
yeah,
what,
this
is
conflict.
what is, I think, important. If you agree that it needs to be there, we've got enough for Monday's meeting with the tri-board, the budget subcommittee. That's what they call it, tri-board. So,
no, call it the town budget subcommittee, that's the.
So I thought you, I
There's
thought
only
you
one-
went over to the dark side.
There's
and called it
only one
tri-board.
person said tri-board.
Yeah, but now it's getting to be a
Yeah.
steamroll. But anyway, who cares?
Does Mike have something to say?
Yeah, I have a
Oh,
question. to say.
sorry.
Something that you said, we have the money this year to do it, the 610.
We won't always.
Regardless whether you took it or you
Yeah.
or taking it from capital. This was an anomaly.
Yeah.
You would have asked me going forward with free cash, we could end up
Yeah, but see,
500 or even 700, when you're using 400 for snow and ice. So today's, we're not gonna be getting $2 million of free cash.
Well, so I think part of the lesson that we need to say is deferred maintenance doesn't defer forever. Okay, and at some point, it comes back and we end up having to pay even more. Had we done this maintenance early on,
Right, we would-
okay, it would have cost a fraction of what we ended up spending. And when you look at the disruption that there was to people's health, to the educational process, to say nothing about the disruption to the budget and to the community fabric, you know, it's pretty, so deferred maintenance doesn't defer forever. There's my,
And it's 610
That's not a hard, I mean, that's
Now
not
it's
a,
something we've learned too, because now, when we start doing things, we make sure that everybody communicates, and we know exactly, you know, so we don't have a repeat of something similar to that.
but
So-
that's not a, I don't see that as all that dramatic a statement.
okay, so,
But it's-
okay,
The
so.
dramatic statement would be.
We're
we
not
should
gonna do
up
this-
Wait, go ahead,
Class
finish what you
size
said.
by 3 so that we can have a maintenance line item.
say that again.
We should increase class size by 3 students so that we can have a maintenance budget. That would be the dramatic statement.
So are we?
I think you have to prove that that would happen.
Well, I don't, yeah, I'm fine.
I don't think increasing class size by 3 would get you a maintenance budget. I think increasing class size by 10 or 12 might get you
Okay, maybe.
all right?
But that is
But
exactly
that's-
why you can't say that until you're ready to say it. Hell, I don't think we're at a point where people are really even ready to read any of this. They're not used to seeing the data or even realizing that we're not hiding money somewhere. So
That's the killer.
I think, you know, if we could get this 2 years running, I think we can have real dialogue about where is 300,000 gonna come from to make up, you know, what we need that we don't have in new revenue, right? Where's it gonna come from? So we're not talking about one position, we're talking about some big numbers. Do we put off doing roads and sidewalks for 2 years? You know, there's a bunch of things we could be talking about, but we never have that conversation. Why? Because we react, and we get a windfall from free cash, and we spread it as like peanut
Well, it's
butter.
not, we do have the conversation, it's just, there's no answer. There's no answer for how we're gonna pay for Green Meadow and fire station. We can talk about it in the tri-board, we can talk about it everywhere, you know, unless we pay, you know, build another, 129 Park or someplace, we can't afford it.
So are you sure of that? You just said,
Well,
you know, increase class size by
Okay.
3 to
Yeah.
12. And we could put 5 or 6 of those together. Now, sooner or later, you gotta pay the piper and you gotta get new revenue. But it might bridge us to something if we really start talking that way. And we're not talking that way, not in a concerted effort, not in a disciplined way. Or we wouldn't have put $50,000 in the, you know, sorry, in the out of free cash into the operating budget last week. You know, those are things you just go, you know what, I need that, and 250,000 more from there, and I plug a gap.
right, yep.
Or I do a bond, or whatever it may be.
Actually, so, hard truths, one would be the subsidizing the operating budget as bad practice. Does that go in the executive summary? And then, if we're gonna tell bad stuff.
Subsidizing the operating budget from,
Free cash.
That's assuming.
It's in that, you realize, if you look in that spreadsheet, it says, free cash, 50,000, you know, putting in as.
No, so we're not subsidizing the operating budget from free cash. We're subsidizing the operating budget from capital. Okay, free cash is what's left over. If we had set aside money, then we would have had less free cash.
Yeah, because part of the budget transfer is from the capital stabilization. It's not from free cash.
No, it is from,
It's directly.
By definition, free cash, if expenses equal revenue, free cash is zero.
Right, right.
And so
By
if we had had a budget, if we had set out a budget for FY 2019 with increased money going to capital stabilization in the first place, then free cash would have been lower. True?
Yes.
Okay.
And why
That's
can't we
why-
have even that conversation?
That's my point, is we're not subsidizing it out of free cash. We're subsidizing out of an even worse place, which is the capital stabilization. Free cash makes it sound like, okay, I
it's
found
not.
20
I
bucks
know,
in my
but we know what
pocket
free cash
and I
is.
spent it on
I know,
food.
but
That's
I don't-
not what happened. We didn't find 20 bucks in our
Right.
pocket,
Yeah, yeah.
okay? We took 20 bucks out of our savings account and we're spending it, frittering it away.
So,
Well,
if
but-
we know those consequences of those kinds of actions, if we start really getting disciplined about making them very public and talking about them, we can have a chance of not repeating some of the same foibles, mistakes, I think.
So did you have another hard truth that you wanted to?
Well, if you were, again, I actually would support a sentence or two sentences to say, we think there's very little waste, there's no magic pot of money, all you people out there complaining about government sucking up your money, wasting your money,
happening.
you're wrong.
I beg your pardon?
All you people complaining about government wasting money, you're wrong about the town of Maynard.
Well, yeah, federal government's another thing. Yeah.
I'm not defending all of government.
Do you want to send me a couple of lines?
Take the challenge.
Would you? Seriously, I'm asking you,
About-
because
I
at some
know.
point, you have, as soon as you try to write it down, and you have Jill on this left shoulder saying, wait a minute, what's your real message? Do you want help, or do you want people to just run away? You might struggle with how to word it, and I have, I can tell you.
So if you have, I tell you what, if you all have sentences, you don't even have to do the prose. Just send them to me and we'll put them into the prose.
I have
and-
done
You don't have to put it in.
Okay, so we
You
can't,
guys do
we're
a
not gonna
perfectly
do
good
this,
job.
hold on a second. We're not gonna do this offline, okay? If you have inputs from what Bob sent out, then send them to me and Bob and I will work on it and, because we can't do this offline with the whole committee.
Right,
All right?
okay.
So trust us that we'll do an executive summary.
Yeah.
But in the two places where you see red, like the A to E, which is kind of last year's statement that I think you crafted, I like.
I did.
And I updated a little bit about the capital, but maybe not strongly enough.
Well,
That's
s-
where I want a little bit more of
So
the meat.
this was the statement that you may remember, we are going to continue to monitor and examine the following trends. The funding for the Maynard Public Schools, okay, and the whole idea is that we've been funding them at a level below level service funding. Capital projects, and so last year we had talked about, and we're going to have to update this.
But this year,
obviously,
look at
because-
the second statement, the second sentence, that's new. Where we're trying to say, we didn't have 129 Parker revenue last year. This year we had 500,000, and it's going largely just support shortfalls from the operating budget. So we could even make that a stronger statement, but those are that's the places you want to put some meat on the bones of what.
I want to say
makes it
how
clear.
much. I want to say how much
So
it
let's
is.
do it, let's do it.
Because that $610,000 could have gone into the capital or general stabilization.
Yeah.
Been down payment on your fire station right there.
Absolutely, and
the
that's
50,000
the
for
problem.
envelope study.
And that is, and by the way, keep that in mind when we start voting on these reserve fund transfers. Okay.
Yeah. So those two places, if you would, because you did it last year, and you really know this charter school thing better than I. The other place was the charter school.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
school up. But
No,
this is,
I've got the figures on
Yeah.
the charter school. I just haven't updated the thing.
so we're talking
So
about
the-
the end of page 5, those
So-
A to E notes. Put a new one in if you think there's
Okay,
new images.
hold on.
Hey, I
So
wrote it. No, I'm kidding, I wrote it with you. Get out of here.
So the third one is water sewer infrastructure.
I think we really need to put something in there about how we don't have enough water for the town, and we need to build that what is it, the pond, the pipe to the pond?
The White Pond.
So Jill's gonna update C. You can.
I'm sending you
Okay,
guys, I got it now.
all right, and then increasing tax revenue through growth. All right, so 120 on Parker Street is not sufficient. And then the fifth one was recreational marijuana. Okay,
All right.
and so those are the 5 things: funding of Maynard Public Schools, capital projects, water sewer infrastructure, increasing tax revenue through growth, and recreational marijuana.
Do we have any numbers we can get from like Salem or some of the other places that have approved it, like to get an idea of how much that revenue is? Because I don't think it's a lot. I think it's gonna be less than 100K.
We've mentioned it
On
as
what,
a,
recreational marijuana?
Yeah.
Smoke one.
Where you gonna get that number from?
The towns that have opened up, so.
Yeah, but they're wildly skewed, because they either have huge
You
business.
had one town that put in recently $1 million.
Really?
Really?
And DOR came back and said, you have no basis to do it. And they said, well, we're basing it on these other towns. You know what DOR did? They told them to take a hike, and they said, you gotta take that $1 million out.
Yeah.
They are, I'm being very serious. We would have put in a number next year, and you said 250,000. I guarantee you, we can't back it up with some guarantee we're gonna get it. And if we said, well, other towns.
No, but you could sit here and say, we anticipate sales, well, first off, we're not putting it in a budget.
Oh, I know.
We're sitting here saying, here are the issues.
Right.
If we could sit there and put together a sales figure, then we would be able to sit there and also put in, you multiply it by 0.03 and then,
so we did
DOR
summarize the low.
scrutinizing every town
Yeah.
that even have.
so that's a good point, Mike. I mean, so you're right. It's not something we would want to put in on a line item in a budget.
Everybody keeps using that as if this is gonna be.
Yeah.
No, and that's exactly my point. So my point is that, people are like, this is our pot of money. This is our pot
So
of
we,
gold.
so just so
And I
you
don't
know,
think it's gonna
take a
be.
look at the end of the thing, just.
Oh, I don't think it's
Yeah.
gonna be a pot of gold.
Yeah.
And I
And
don't
we
think.
say that, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to tell you that, take a look at the
Yeah,
words at the
it's
bottom
right
of
there.
8, it says, to a lesser extent, tax from marijuana sales. We are saying some incremental revenue, we're not saying a pot of gold. In fact, we're saying explicitly, it's nowhere near enough for the needs we have and the challenges we have. So there are some hard truths in there. If you want to make them shorter and, jump out of the page, great. But some of them are there. So
We need to
that-
have it in place in time for 2021. It's 150th anniversary. We're gonna have a lot of people going through the town.
As long as we can smoke outside.
All right, so those are the 5 issues that were sort of on our watch list. Is there anything else that we need to research? All right, so again, send them to me, I'll share them with Bob, we'll write around. We will get this out to you. I think Bob and I would like them sooner rather than later, so we can start to draft this thing up for next Monday's meeting with the town budget subcommittee. So that's where we're gonna
But we
present
won't publish it until
No.
you have one more chance to
Right.
review and correct and whatever.
Yeah.
Is that reasonable? Peter?
So
It's
what-
very reasonable. I'm gonna be totally upfront. I'm not gonna do anything more than be at this meeting tonight, so. I'm not sure what wording I committed to, but I'm decommitting. So,
You should say something.
I can look at something, if you are more specific, but, I know what's going on in my life right now, so.
Okay.
I don't wanna overpromise.
Timelines?
Yeah.
Like, looking at it this weekend, giving feedback this weekend?
No,
What-
no,
what are you
if
looking
you
for?
have any thoughts of what to add to this, look, Bob sent this out at what, 6:09, was it?
Yeah.
So you all haven't had a chance to see it, review it. If you've got some initial thoughts for us to include in a draft, send them to me and I'll share them with Bob and we will do it. We're not gonna do a big group committee offline thing, because obviously that would violate open meeting law, and that's not the intent. We will bring this to the next Monday, our meeting on the 13th, which is a public hearing, and we will finalize and vote on it at that point, or at least get your official okey-dokey, all right?
If you'd like, I'll give you the spreadsheet, I'll send the spreadsheet out to that, because it's really hard to read in the 8.5 by 11 format. The last one that is really the culmination of the,
He's already said he's not gonna do
I'm
anything.
talking to Joe,
Oh, okay.
revenue and
Maybe you can do
expenses.
some magic on the graphics, right?
Make it pretty.
I gotta get rid of the
Make it
highlights.
readable.
I gotta get rid of the highlights, shut. It's hard to get all that stuff in there.
Don't worry, when I open it on my Mac, I won't be able to see the highlights, so.
That's what I mean, so I'll get rid of it now.
All right, anything else? All right, upcoming schedule, next meeting is the 13th, is our public hearing, mandated by the charter. We'll also do some last votes and so forth, but we're basically just doing the public hearing and last minute cleanup before the May 20th
It's one
town
vote,
meeting.
right, for the Rockland?
I'm sorry, yes.
Everything else we.
Right,
yeah.
correct.
Okay, sweet.
You know I will be here on the 13th.
I remember you saying that now.
Okay.
You say your next meeting is when?
13th,
13th,
public hearing.
public hearing. All right, anything else?
Do you need me to do anything for the reserve fund between now and then? For you?
We can talk about that. Why don't we talk about that at the end? PJ, you're gonna give me a motion? I'll second it. All those in favor?
All right.
Unanimous.